My name is William Maitland. I'm an assistant state attorney in Jacksonville, Florida. Until 3 months ago, I thought I was happily married to the gorgeous, big-breasted, and long-legged Debbie Bascom, who was helping me raise our teenage daughter and son. Life seemed perfect, or so I thought. Then one night, she said 4 words that, at the time, I believe she regretted. But in hindsight, it was probably the best thing that could have happened because at least it gave me a heads up about what was coming my way. "I want a divorce," she said, and with that, everything started to unravel. Within 3 weeks, her 28-year-old lover was spending nights in my house and things got ugly. Ugly in ways I hadn't imagined. It looked like we were headed for an epic court battle, the kind that would leave scars on both of us. But just when I was ready to go to war, a friend of mine gave me copies of emails between Debbie and her lover. The emails exposed everything. The lies, the betrayal, the nights she said she was working late. It shattered any illusions I had left about my marriage. The worst part? She had been lying to my face, all while sneaking around with him. When she saw those emails, it knocked the wind right out of her sails. She meekly agreed to my terms for a divorce. She didn't have any fight left in her. The truth had broken her. We made our goodbyes in the strangest way. I was in my workout clothes, drenched in sweat at an Avondale gym, when she surprised me by showing up one night. I think she came to apologize, or maybe she wanted something else, who knows? But I could see it in her eyes, the shock, the disbelief. She hadn't expected to find me transformed. The Pillsbury Doughboy she once knew was gone. In his place was a shaved head, somewhat in-shape middle-aged man who had finally started fighting for himself. There might have been more she wanted to say, but it was too late. Entirely too late. So here I am, the following Monday, trying to focus on the trial of a man who murdered his wife, the love of his life. He killed her. I killed my marriage. And now I have to decide his fate. Monday, July 11th, 2005, 9 a.m. As I entered the office, I heard a buzzing sound that got louder with each step I took and every floor I rode up in the elevator. Everyone who got on or off the elevator glanced my way before quickly looking away. When I got to the 5th floor and walked to my office, I noticed people whispering and gasping occasionally. I couldn't help but feel like a big fish swimming past smaller ones. Cheryl was frozen in surprise when I got to my office at 8:30 a.m., a bit later than usual, and started looking through the Bingham file. Charles Bingham was on trial today for the death of his wife, Mabel, whom he was accused of hurting with too much morphine. On the surface, it seemed like a clear case. He had admitted to it. Yet I had delved deeper into this case than most prosecutors would, discovering details that weighed heavily on my mind. Today, I had tough choices to make. Lost in my notes, I heard Cheryl clear her throat. She stood in the doorway, looking startled. "What's going on here, Cheryl?" I asked. "Bill, Mr. Maitland, is something wrong? Do you know?" "What?" She waved her hand vaguely in my direction. What are you trying to say?" "Wait a minute," she said, stepping out briefly and coming back with a large mirror. "Look." I glanced in the mirror. "So what?" "You look different." "Differently how?" "You seem like you could be in a crime show. The shaved head, all in black. You look a little pale with that outfit." "Close the door and sit down," I instructed her. "You know I shaved my head last Thursday. You saw me Friday. I'm in black because I haven't done laundry lately. This was the cleanest outfit I had, and it matched. Deb used to help me pick my clothes. Honestly, it was just easier to wear this. If it looks a bit spooky, that's fine. I just don't go outside as much anymore." She shook her head slowly. "I guess that makes sense, but you look a bit unsettling. Maybe it will make some defense attorneys more willing to work together instead of putting up a fight. That would be nice." She simply shook her head and stepped back out. I returned to my files. Just then, there was another knock at the door. I called out, "Come in." A man walked in. Not many people can do that, but Carl Cameron had been reporting on this beat and writing features nearly as long as I had been with the state attorney's office. Like any good reporter, he had built a relationship with me, and he knew how to use it. I wasn't particularly fond of him, but he was a good guy, and sometimes you need the press on your side. He took one look at me and did a double take. Wow, Cheryl was right. You are quite impressive. Thank you. So, why did you say no to Jessica Stevens when she invited you to stay the night? His smile faded. That's too personal. I've never mentioned your divorce, and I know more about it than you'd want to be made public. That caught my attention. I had known him for over 8 years, and I had never seen him react like this. He was always professional, making it hard to tell if he was being friendly or just working. Each time I needed to correct him professionally, he brushed it off and we moved on. I had never touched a sensitive topic. Do you have feelings for her? His expression could have silenced many. Carl was a hard worker, but not the quiet type. He was about my height, but much broader, probably weighing 60 to 70 pounds more than me, all solid muscle. He had dark hair and always looked a bit rugged, like an athlete. Right then, he seemed frustrated. I'd rather not get into that, Mr. Maitland. Let's get back to business. I nodded, but I couldn't resist adding, thinking of how distant she seemed each time we talked. You know she really cares about you? I'm not giving relationship advice, but letting her go based on what she told me would be a mistake. She told you. I thought you knew everything, Carl. A couple of months ago, we went out for drinks. We almost ended up in a different situation. I could tell he was processing this. We didn't. But if you keep hesitating, she might find someone else, not because she wants to, but because you are missing an opportunity. If that happens, you will only have yourself to blame. He just looked at me and then said, As you said, Bill, you're not the best person to give advice about relationships, especially considering what you've let go. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about the Bingham case. What? It's not too important. It will be interesting, but if it's not important, why is the second-in-command in our office working on it? There must be more to it than what is in the records. There is. Listen, if I ask you to let this one go, would you? Just a few paragraphs, maybe a page or two. You don't need to do a full breakdown of the trial. He sat down across from me. I already knew his response. He was a reporter, just like I was a prosecutor. Sorry, it's a criminal case, and the more you talk, the more I see it might be significant. You know me. I will be fair, but I can't pass up a good story. I'm picking up on something about this. I sighed. I had tried. We had talked once, and he had shared a story about a girl he knew when he was a young newspaper reporter in Sarasota, Florida. Her father had been a reporter, and she had been a supportive girlfriend because he told her that a true reporter is someone who jumps up to follow a story when they hear the sirens. Her father lived that way, which is why he had been married 5 times before he died at 49, and Carl was similar. I knew he wouldn't back down, but I had to give it a shot. There are some unusual parts to this, Carl. If you cover it, please be gentle. Can I ask you that? He looked at me confused. What's going on, Bill? You're not usually worried about the feelings of someone accused of a crime, especially not in a serious case like this. This is different. I can't explain everything right now, but you'll understand soon. We exchanged looks, both silent for a while. Finally, he got up and walked to the door. He paused, turning back to me with his hand on the knob. You're right, Bill. I care for her, but it's not going to work. I'd try anything, but I can't. After he left, I stared at the door. I should have felt better about myself, but it hurt to see someone struggling more than I was. About half an hour later, I was in court in Judge Dominic DeLauro's courtroom. There was no jury. Bingham had already admitted guilt to first-degree murder, and the plea was accepted. This was mainly a sentencing hearing to give the judge information for deciding on the punishment, which could be anything from a serious penalty to a warning. Jessica Stevens had given the opening statement for us, laying out the case. She gave me a small, sad smile and avoided looking at Cameron, who was sitting behind the defense lawyer. Dennis Leary, a boisterous attorney from the public defender's office, gave the defense's opening. He wasn't denying that his client harmed his wife. He couldn't, since the plea was already in place. Instead, he tried to appeal to the judge's emotions, sharing about his client's 52-year marriage and the challenges they faced as his wife fought cancer for several years. Leary's nose was as red as a comedian's, and he had a reputation for outdrinking other lawyers. He often seemed carefree about relationships with his co-workers at the public defender's office, but had also pushed some of my best assistants to their limits. I had tried to convince him to leave the public defender's office and work with me many times, but he always said no. "I just really dislike police and prosecutors except for you," he said with a smirk, making his words sound light even though I could tell he felt strongly about it. His feelings against law enforcement were clear, and he brought that passion to court. He was better than most defense lawyers, earning far less than them but proving his worth through skill. He glanced at me and raised his eyebrows slightly. He wanted to joke about my look but decided not to. He was probably thinking about the closing statement he would make, excited to challenge the other side. I stood up and smiled at Jessica, who was trying hard not to look at Cameron. Tears shone in her eyes. Then I spoke to DeLauro. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. Bingham to the stand." Bingham was tall, around 6'4", bald, and thin, with long arms and legs. He moved slowly and seemed to struggle with each step. I knew he had rheumatoid arthritis, which likely made walking uncomfortable. But there was more than just pain. The long fight with his wife's illness had taken a toll on him. I looked at DeLauro, a respected 56-year-old judge of Italian descent with graying black hair and a prominent nose. He smiled at me. We had played poker in his office before while waiting for juries, and I often lost a few dollars to him. It was all in good fun. I approached Bingham. He looked at me with little interest. Usually, when someone is on the stand, you can see their fear, but Bingham seemed calm, as if he didn't care what would happen. "Mr. Bingham, I'm Assistant State Attorney William Maitland. We've met before." "Do you remember me?" He just nodded. "You're an honest man, aren't you, Mr. Bingham?" That caught his attention. His eyes widened as he said, "I try to be. I think my daughters would say I was honest." He looked over at the audience, and I saw them both watching him. The older daughter had dark hair, and the younger one had long brown hair. They were already teary-eyed, trying to smile at him. They had just lost their mother and feared they might lose their father, too. Even a short sentence given his age and health issues might mean he wouldn't walk out of prison as a free man. "You didn't lie when they found you with your wife. You admitted giving her the final dose of pain medicine." He didn't answer. They weren't questions. I walked back to my table and picked up 2 items. Returning to the witness stand, I handed them to him, and he took them with shaking hands. I pointed to the tall, dark-haired woman in both pictures. She was in her early 20s in one photo, happily standing next to a tall young man. The other was taken many years later. She looked tall and graceful. "That is your wife, Mabel, isn't it?" He simply nodded, and tears began to flow down his face. "She was a truly beautiful woman, Mr. Bingham. You were a lucky man." He looked up at me, moistening his dry lips. "She was so beautiful it hurt to look at her when I met her," he said. "She was too good for me, and I often told her that. We had a wonderful life together, and she gave me 2 amazing daughters." I gazed into his eyes and said, "I can tell. You clearly loved her very much." I leaned closer and lowered my voice, mindful that the judge could still hear me. Leary leaned forward in his seat, trying to catch every word. "Mr. Bingham, you had 2 daughters, and it's clear that both of you cared deeply for each other. Would I be correct to say that you were happy together?" He looked at me with a confused expression. "I don't mean to be rude, but this is important. You were a good match?" Leary almost stood up but then sat back, clearly waiting for a better moment to object. I leaned in a little more. "Please don't take offense. We're all adults here. You were married. It's a part of life. You had a good relationship, right?" He seemed to retreat into his thoughts for a moment, but then he smiled. He spoke softly, but his words were clear. "You don't want to talk about that in front of your children, even when they're grown. But yes, we were very happy together. To be honest, when we first got married, I couldn't have been happier. And she was a wonderful partner." I nodded. "I know you've faced difficulties in life, and health issues have troubled you in your later years, but these photos show a young, strong man. I bet you had plenty of admirers before you got married, didn't you?" He rubbed his lips with his finger and looked back at the photos. I could see him momentarily return to a happier time in his life, and a brief smile crossed his face. I leaned forward and spoke gently. It's all right, Mr. Bingham. We were all young once. A guy like you must have had no shortage of people interested in you. I guess your daughters never knew about your... Did you have any past experiences before you met their mother? Leary was walking near me, standing in front of the judge. He was trying hard to keep his voice low so the audience wouldn't hear, but he was so loud that it was tough to ignore. Your Honor, I've held back my thoughts for too long, but this is too much. I'm going to object because this makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if Mr. Maitland is looking for fun or if he has other reasons for this questioning, but talking about my client's past has nothing to do with this case at all. Nothing. I just stared at Delaro. You've seen my work before, Your Honor. I promise this questioning is important for the case. Please allow me some space to continue. The judge nodded slightly. As Leary walked back to his spot, he paused near me and whispered, "You're walking a fine line, and I'm going to make things hard for you. Just a heads up." Mr. Bingham, do you remember the question? Yes. He paused for a moment, looking at his daughters before meeting my gaze again. I wasn't always this tired version of myself, Mr. Maitland. I was young and strong with normal dreams. It was the 50s, and yes, women found me attractive. I was interested in them too. I never hid anything from Mabel. She knew, but you don't share everything with your children. Thank you for being honest. I spoke a bit louder so Leary could hear, but tried not to startle Bingham. I asked those questions because I wanted to understand your situation while your wife was unwell. You were a young man with normal desires, married to a lovely, passionate woman. You had a good relationship. Now, I'm going to ask you a tough question. You were a handsome man. Women were attracted to you when you were single. I'm not judging you, but we all have feelings. Did you ever find yourself tempted? Did you ever look for comfort outside your marriage? Leary reacted quickly, almost shouting, "Oh, no!" Sorry, Your Honor, I apologize, but honestly, Judge, you need to stop him before he makes a mistake. Bingham's daughters were standing up, glaring at me. Your Honor, you've known me for a while. I don't ask questions without a reason. Give me a bit more room to work. He nodded, and I looked back at Leary. He shook his head and muttered just loudly enough for me to hear, "I really don't like prosecutors." I focused back on Bingham. His eyes were brighter now, and he seemed more alive. Anger was energizing. No, Mr. Maitland. I never betrayed my wife. Yes, I had chances, but I was loyal. I worked in corporate sales and training for IBM. I traveled all over, helping companies set up their computer systems, fixing problems, and trying to sell them all the features I could. I had lunches, late dinners, and Saturday outings. We played golf to support our work. I met many women. He spoke softly and glanced at his children. Then he said, "Yes, some of them were friendly and attractive. If I had wanted to, I could have been unfaithful to Mabel. I'm human, and I would be lying if I said I wasn't tempted sometimes. But I always remembered that I was married." I stayed close to him, my voice low, like we were in a quiet bar discussing something personal. I'm sorry if my questions seem too blunt, but I wanted to set the stage for what I will ask next. You had a strong bond with your wife. You were a healthy man. Her illnesses must have been especially hard for you. He looked at me, and I felt his anger fade, as if he knew what was coming. You and your wife had a close relationship, and you were healthy. Then she got sick, went through treatments, and faced many changes. She was often unwell. You loved her and stood by her, but that must have been hard. You're not young anymore, but you are still a man. He shook his head and looked me in the eye. You've never cared for someone who is very sick, have you? Luckily, no. I can't imagine how difficult that must be. It feels like losing someone while they fight to survive. They can reach a point where they can't get out of bed, and your whole world shrinks to that bedroom. They need care like a child, and over time, all the respect you've built can fade. You don't mean for it to happen, but you find it hard to remember them as the capable adults they were. They can become even more dependent than a child. It's like they're starting over, isn't it? He looked at the pictures of his wife and said, They become so weak that even the thought of touching them feels uncomfortable. They seem uninterested even if they know you're there. When they turn inward, it's like... He paused, searching for the right words. Like a disconnect, right? It's like being with someone who has changed completely, and in this case, it's the person you've shared your life with for many years. You can't even think about that, can you? He nodded. But that doesn't answer my question, Mr. Bingham. Your wife was sick for years. I assume that meant there was little physical connection during that time. But you weren't without feelings. Even at the end, you were in your early 70s. You had some health issues, but did you stop feeling normal emotions? Leary spoke closely, addressing DeLauro. I've tried, truly, Your Honor. I've tried to hold back, but I can't keep quiet. I'm not sure what Mr. Maitland is up to, but it raises some questions. He is putting pressure on a man who has already lost his wife, and I don't see a good reason for it. Unless he plans to say that Mr. Bingham did something to his wife to chase another relationship. Mr. Leary looked at me and understood. He glanced at Bingham and saw something in the old man's eyes. Oh no, Leary said quietly. Bill, have you lost your sense of decency? I may not like any prosecutor, but I was willing to let this slide. This is below what I expected. You can't be that eager for a win. Then he turned to DeLauro and said, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I expect to face a fine or a warning for this outburst once the trial ends, but I need to step away before I really regret what I say. DeLauro simply observed him as he walked off. Usually he would have disciplined most attorneys for such behavior, but he admired Leary's passion. DeLauro then looked back at me, still a bit shocked by what he had heard. Is this the direction you're taking, Mr. Maitland? I'm afraid so, Your Honor. I went back to my table, took a piece of paper and a photograph, then returned. I first handed the photo to Bingham. It showed two couples, Bingham next to his wife in a wheelchair, and a red-headed woman beside a shorter man who held her hand. Can you tell me who the couple is next to you and your wife? He replied without looking at me. That's Murray Benjamin, and that's his wife, Rachel. They were our neighbors. We've known them for 30 years. They live in that two-bedroom house next door to you? The red brick one? Mr. Benjamin has passed away, right? Yes, 5 years ago. He was only 58. Just one day he passed away. Rachel stayed in the house after he was gone. She was a good friend to Mabel and me. Maybe a bit closer to you than to Mabel? One of his daughters gasped. The younger one, I think. The older one stared at me with a look that could freeze water. I don't know how to answer that. Maybe this will help. I gave him the second item I had taken, a handwritten note. Can you read that to the judge? He just shook his head. Okay. It says, I'm an old fool, but I can't stop thinking about the other night. You were wonderful. One of his daughters, the one who had gasped, started crying loudly. Her sister pulled her close, comforting her. Mrs. Benjamin gave that note to our investigator recently. We didn't need to press her much. I think she felt guilty about what was happening. She said she felt guilty. Were you close to Mrs. Benjamin? Bingham stared at his hands for a long time before lifting his head, looking tired and meeting my gaze. How old are you, Mr. Maitland? 41, but some days I feel much older. You might not get it, but I'll explain. When you reach your 60s and 70s, women start to look at you differently. They don't see a man anymore. They see an older person. The way they smile at you changes. They don't really notice you. To my daughters, I'm just dad. Kids don't think about their parents having feelings. They don't see that you still need connection in life. If Mabel had been well, we would have shared special moments together. Even those in their 80s at nursing homes still want companionship. But she wasn't really there anymore. Not the Mabel I loved. She hadn't been for years. I did what you'd expect a man to do. But it's cold and lonely. You might think finding comfort alone would be easier as you get older. But it's not. I was used to having a loving partner with me. I think I get it now, Mr. Bingham. You were lonely. Rachel Benjamin was lonely too, wasn't she? Her husband passed away years ago. Did she meet anyone new? She went out. She told me she had dates. But she said she felt even lonelier after those outings than before. She didn't really know them, and they didn't genuinely care about her, just for a short time. But we had been friends for a very long time. The first time we spent time together without others, it just happened. The girls stayed with their mother to let me have dinner out. They didn't think twice about me going with Rachel since we had often gone out as couples. They didn't even consider that I might want companionship. I was just dad. And you kept seeing her? Yes, it began as mutual support for both of us. But over the months it evolved into something deeper. I suppose that's common. We had known each other for so long. We liked each other before, and the emotional bond grew. I started looking forward to seeing her, and soon we began thinking and talking about what the future might hold. We both knew Mabel couldn't last much longer, and she wasn't truly present anymore. She was just there. At that moment, his youngest daughter broke down in tears, and her older sister took her out of the room. But Mabel wouldn't leave us, would she? He stayed quiet. And when she held on, Rachel began to feel guilty, didn't she? She felt like she was letting down her oldest friend. She told you it was hard to think about your daughters finding out. She wanted to stop, maybe even move away. And you didn't want that, right? Silence. And you said something would change over that weekend, and then you both could be together. That's what she told our investigator. Was she lying? Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. I could hear the audience shifting in their seats, eager to catch every word. I even thought I could hear Cameron's pen scratching as he took notes in his notebook. How could you know that Mabel would wake up and ask you for help that weekend? He avoided my gaze. Did she truly wake up, Mr. Bingham? Or did you simply decide you had done enough after caring for her? Was it fair for her to rely on you like that? You went above and beyond what many would for a partner. I don't know many who would care for someone for so long. And you said she wouldn't suffer. You claimed she wasn't really there anymore. Finally, he looked at me. Tears were streaming down his face. It was only after she was gone that I realized what I had done. She looked so pale, so still. But when I looked at her, I saw her smiling like she did on our first date. She was so beautiful. I promised her I'd love her forever and be there for her always. And two. He leaned forward, and I barely managed to keep him upright. Moments later, bailiffs helped him to the ground, and a doctor in the audience rushed over. After a quick check, he assured everyone, including Bingham's daughter who had hurried back, that he was fine. He had just fainted. The doctor helped him recover quickly. After Bingham was helped back to his seat beside his daughter, DeLauro announced that the trial would continue the next morning at 10 a.m. About 30 minutes later, Bingham was well enough to walk. 2 bailiffs supported him as he left the courtroom. His daughter was going to drive him home, but before they left, she walked over to me. She stood almost 6 feet tall and looked down at me. I hope you feel proud of yourself. My sister is leaving town now, and she says she never wants to see him again. He has lost his wife, and you may have cost him his daughter. For what? My mother passed away long ago, and he has accepted that. Now you might send him to prison for a long time. I've lost my mother, and I might lose my father, and possibly my sister too. I hope you think about the impact of your choices. As Jessica walked away, she said, You did what you thought was right, Bill. She's just hurting a lot right now. Leary stood in front of the prosecution table. I've always wondered, what is it like to hold someone's fate in your hands? You've changed a man's life and torn his family apart. You know he was responsible. He didn't act to end her suffering. He made choices for himself. Is that acceptable to you? Taking the lives of family members when they become a burden? You can't be sure about that. You're guessing someone's reasons without knowing for sure. You're not in a place to judge. We have proof, notes, and testimonies. We know what we need to know. How do you live with this, Bill? You've changed someone's life forever. How will you sleep tonight? I haven't ruined anything. You could say the same when you make your argument tomorrow. The judge might agree it's hard to understand what he felt at that moment. Bingham seemed like a sympathetic character on the stand. He might get a lighter sentence or even parole. Have I ever mentioned that I dislike prosecutors? More than once. You all lack care. People make mistakes because they are human, but you use the law to punish them without thinking about their situation. Someone once said, "The law is an ass." He looked at me, a slight smile spreading on his face. I could report you for not following ethical guidelines. No compassion, remember? What ethical violations? You should have told me what you found out about the girlfriend. I felt caught off guard. Well, Dennis, I could say this isn't a real trial, but just a hearing, and the usual rules might not apply here. Or I could tell you I have the option to complain about different issues related to your actions, including how you dealt with witnesses. Or about hiding witnesses you knew we needed for our cases when you spoke to them first. But I don't need to bring that up. All I have to do is bring up your secret interactions with a few married folks at the office, especially the woman married to that tough DEA agent, and you could disappear without a trace. He smiled again. In that case, I guess I won't report you. So tell me, Bill, why do I like you? For the same reason I like you. You love what you do and work hard at it. Life is more exciting with you around. The system needs people like us. I think I do my job well and you excel at yours. I'd miss you if you switched to corporate work or started representing insurance companies. He shrugged. That will never happen. I enjoy being in the center of everything too much. You know you fit a stereotype, right? The loud Irishman. He did a decent Clint Eastwood impression and, in a serious tone, said, "A person must know their limits. I am a loud Irishman." But then his smile disappeared and he grew serious. I never had a chance to talk to you about this, but I'm sorry about you and Debbie. Things happen. Seriously. Do you want me to meet her boyfriend to have a talk? You can't do that as an officer of the court, but It was touching because I knew he would do it, or at least try. No, but thanks for the offer. I'm trying to move on from that part of my life. By the way, let August know you're leaving and come work for me. I can raise your salary by $20,000. You'd be my third team member. Sure, I'd have to deal with some office politics and some people wouldn't be pleased, but that shouldn't worry you. He shook his head. No. The funny thing is, I'm almost glad you said no. We wouldn't have the same relationship if I were working for you, but if Miss Stevens offered, that would be different. He flashed a charming smile, one that had won over many, but Jessica turned red and looked away. Oh, well, it was worth a shot, he said. See you later, brother. Jessica stood up with a stack of papers in her hand. I'm heading back to the office. I have some work to finish. See you here tomorrow morning. She gave Cameron a final quick glance and walked away. After she left, Cameron came over and said, This is quite a story. I looked at him, recalling his idea of a great reporter. I think you're a bit heartless, Carl. You just witnessed a man's life change. Even if he gets a break, his family will feel the impact. People will always think he meant to do it. His girlfriend may never see him again. His friends would likely abandon him, and if things went as usual, he wouldn't hold on much longer. Long-term couples who lose a partner often follow soon after. I had a feeling he wouldn't want to stick around. And to you, it's just another story. Lawyers thrive on tough cases, surgeons look for the riskiest surgeries, and reporters chase stories like this. It's my job. I understood where he was coming from. He led me out of the courthouse for an interview, where a photographer was ready. I paused for a moment. I had been photographed many times before, but... Come on, Bill. That look will make for a great shot. We could call it The Avenger in the Courtroom, or maybe The Justice Unleashed. Some readers will get the reference. You remember your Greek mythology, right? The Furies were the ones who pursued wrongdoers relentlessly. They had no escape. In this case, you'd be the bald avenger of justice. You know I like you, Carl, right? But you're mistaken, and you can quote me on that. Finally alone in the elevator to the 5th floor, I still wondered if I had made the right choice. Bingham might receive a light punishment. Anything more would be too severe. DeLauro would have to choose between a gentle approach or a harsh sentence for something many would understand. I thought about the photos of Mabel Bingham, first as a young woman and then as she grew older. She had once been beautiful. Like most victims, she would probably visit me in my dreams. I wondered if she would thank me for revealing her husband's unfaithfulness or look at me with anger for upsetting the man she had loved all her life. Then, as I often did, I thought about my father, and my eyes filled with tears. He pulled away slightly, and she almost protested, but he gently moved her onto her back. The moment was charged, but she concentrated on calming her breath. He reached out and held her close, his touch kind and caring. She felt a deeper connection between them grow, even as her thoughts wandered. Although she felt overwhelmed, a sense of calm began to settle around her. There was a pause as they both took a breath, and she shifted her position. She could sense his gaze softening. The room was quiet, heavy with feelings, yet they both lay still, simply being in the moment. You okay? He asked, his voice gentle now. She nodded, feeling more grounded again. Time seemed to slow and she could think more clearly. They exchanged a few light words, enjoying the soothing comfort of the night. "It's not easy, but I care about us too much to mess it up," he said. "I think I believe you." "Lots of people would want to be with me, but I haven't been with anyone else," she replied. "Yeah, I know." "Doug, you talk too much. You're great, but why do you have to mention my ex? Are you really that insecure?" "I don't get it. Why is Bill—" "Because I broke up with him, that's why. Sometimes I feel guilty. It's silly, but I do. I don't want to think about him when we're together. Isn't that easy to understand?" "No, but it can be hard sometimes. This is his house, his memories, his pictures. Why don't you take them down? Or come to my place?" "Because your place makes me uncomfortable. It's full of people who make me feel out of place. I just prefer being here. The same way I feel uncomfortable here. You don't have to keep coming around if it's too much for you." "What happened, Deb? When you called me, it seemed like you wanted me back." "Didn't it seem that way? I thought I made it clear." She wasn't ready to tell him about the emails. They made her uneasy, but she hoped things would calm down. She looked at him and then invited him to follow her into another room. "Come here," she said, stepping away. He followed her, looking puzzled. "What's going on?" "I don't want things to end badly between us," she said quietly. "You can just handle it yourself." Doug looked frustrated but sighed as he tried to relax. The tension in the room was still thick, but he stayed quiet. "Doug, listen. You need to understand that there are limits." "We can't keep doing this," she said softly. He leaned forward, taking a deep breath as if trying to think clearly. "Yeah, I get it," he replied, looking around the room. She handed him his pants from the chair. "Please get dressed." "You're asking me to go?" "Yes, it's time." "That seems harsh," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. She sat down beside him and took his hand, speaking with kindness but firmness. "Doug, remember our last talk? I said we were friends. That's all this has been. We've had fun together, but that's where it stops." "Why am I not the one saying this?" he asked, confused. "I don't know. Maybe I just never thought you would." "Why not? We get along well. We're both doing great in our careers. I might get more attention because I'm younger, but you have earned your respect too. People say you'd do great in any company." She shook her head, her voice gentle but steady. "Doug, you're dreaming. Those dreams could spoil our friendship. You know you won't be able to stay here in Jacksonville. It's smarter to leave before things get messy." "Are you serious?" "Yes. The stuff with Bill has affected us both. Too many people know and they have their views. Any job you apply for will find a reason not to hire you. They want someone they think is focused on their work." Doug looked down, clearly frustrated, but he kept quiet. "And I'm not moving, Doug. I have kids, and they're settled here. Their lives, their friends, their father are all here. I can't change that for them. And even if I wanted to move, I think Bill would do everything he could to stop me, and you've seen that he knows how to use the law." She looked at him with some sympathy and reached out to show a little kindness. "Plus, think about it. I'm almost 40 and you're still in your 20s. When you're 40, I'll be 52 and likely going through a lot of changes. You might want to start a family. I have 2 kids and I'm not having more. I don't want to be at school events while dealing with life's challenges. Your friends aren't my friends. We don't even like the same music." She hugged him gently. "It's not fair, Doug, but you can't compete with Bill in that way. We have kids together. He was my first true love. Even though we're done, he and I share a past that's different from ours." He stood up to get dressed. The kids were out, but they would be back soon. She put on some comfortable shorts and a simple blouse. She walked Doug to the front door. Just before he could step out, she turned him around for a warm goodbye. "I cherish our time together, Doug. Just don't ask for more than I can give." He stepped back and looked at her thoughtfully. "Your problem, Deb, is that you're too selective. You left one husband because he got older, and now you're moving on from someone who cares for you because I'm younger and not like Bill. I hope you find what you want, or you might end up feeling lonely." He opened the door. "I just wish I had met you first." She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Will you come back?" He turned and smiled. "Do I look foolish? I'll take what I can get." I'll call you tomorrow." After he left, she locked the door. Her kids had keys. Then she went to the liquor cabinet and opened it with a key. She pulled out a bottle she liked. Pouring a drink, she returned to their bedroom. Turning on the television, she ignored a stack of papers that needed grading. She figured she could relax for one night. She clicked on the TiVo and found a rerun she had missed of the medical show House. She enjoyed the show, even if she rarely watched it when it aired because it was good television. She also liked it because although she could not explain it well, the main character reminded her of Bill. It seemed silly. The actor was tall and thin, but maybe it was because House was a complicated character focused on his work, and he was the best at it. That must be it. Monday, July 11th, 2005, 10 p.m. She suddenly woke up. Her face was on a damp pillow, remnants of sleep still clinging to her. An empty glass sat on the nightstand, and she blinked at the large screen television showing a blank blue screen. Trying to recall what had just aired after House, she struggled. With a start, she sat up and swung her feet over the bed. Something had woke her, but in her groggy state, she could not tell what it was. Was it a noise? Had one of the kids come in? She listened carefully for any sounds. Usually, she would hear the air conditioning humming in the warm night, but now it was completely quiet. She got up slowly, ensuring she could stand steadily, and walked to the bedroom door to look out. The lights were on, but there was no noise. Going to Kelly's room and then to Bill Jr. She found both empty. Turning back, she went down the stairs, her voice echoing in the silence. "Bill? Kelly, are you here? Is anyone here?" Silence surrounded her, and a feeling of worry washed over her. They had kept a firearm in a safe upstairs, hidden behind a picture. Her heart raced as she looked around, feeling uneasy. She could reach the safety of the upstairs if she needed to. "There's no one here. You're all alone," a familiar voice echoed, but it felt out of reach. "Who? What?" she asked, fear gripping her. "The children are gone. They have their own lives now. They don't need you." Panic rose. Surely she must be dreaming. She held on to the belief that she was simply dreaming in her room. It was just a restless mind playing tricks on her. "Bill is gone. You might think you ended things, but it was him. He was never faithful, just like I warned you. But you didn't listen." She shook her head, feeling strong denial inside her. "You thought he was focused on work. He wasn't. He had others," the voice continued, whispering persistently. "Life isn't fair. Men like Bill have choices. They don't care about age. They look for younger women and forget everything else." "No!" she shouted, standing firm. "I refuse to believe that." A laugh echoed in the quiet space around her. "Debbie, you never understood the lessons I tried to share. You don't truly own anyone. You can't. At best, you share time with them until they find someone different. They aren't loyal and don't love the way women do. They want more. And about Doug, your young friend. You know he was with someone else right after he got home, don't you? And why wouldn't he? Just look at yourself." Suddenly, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She stared at her reflection. When had her body changed so much? A wave of sadness washed over her, making her feel like something was breaking inside. "I am more than this. I am a mother and a successful woman. I am a professor at a major university." "No, Debbie, you're not. You never were. You're just a pretty face. People have always done things for you. Teachers gave you good grades. Professors let you slide on tough assignments. They were attracted to you for your looks, not just your smarts. Even Bill. You think he helped you that day out of kindness? He wanted something else. That's all you've ever been to anyone, a pretty face. And now you're upset because it feels like it's fading away. I told you it would." She sank to her knees, then lay back on the grass that had somehow become her floor. Familiar arms wrapped around her, and she rested her head on a kind shoulder. "Poor thing. I wanted you to have better luck than me. You saw how Frank treated me, how men treated me. I care for you, and I just wanted to protect you from what they did to me. But you wouldn't listen." Gentle hands brushed her hair back and wiped away her tears. "They're all going to leave you, dear. Everyone but me. I will always stay by you." She pressed her face against familiar hair, feeling herself slowly sink as the ground opened up beneath her, heavy with feelings of loss. She started to struggle to sit up, trying to escape the feelings closing in on her, only to feel strong hands hold hers tightly. As the pressure around her grew, she felt overwhelmed, gasping for breath as that familiar voice said, "We will always be together now." She was sitting up in bed, coughing and trying to breathe. For a moment, it felt like something was blocking her throat, but as the memories of the nightmare faded, she managed to catch her breath and relaxed, realizing everything was fine. She lay back on the pillow and took deep breaths. What a terrible dream. It had been a couple of months since she'd had one like that. She noticed she was covered in sweat. She went to the bathroom, took a quick shower, dried off, and put on fresh pajamas. For a brief moment, she let herself think about the dream. Then she started to cry. She quickly told herself to stop. What had happened was in the past. She had tried to help her, but it was something no one could change. Tears came again. You don't stop caring about someone just because they're gone. But while the woman buried in a small cemetery nearby was gone, Debbie reminded herself that she was still here, and her 2 kids were here. Even if Bill would never let her back into his life, and if Doug walked away, there were other men. There would always be other men. She got up and looked in the mirror. She examined herself carefully. She took a breath. She was around a size 28 in the waist, but not much more. She turned to see her body from different angles. She still had enough curves to turn heads in anything snug. It came naturally. She didn't have to try hard. She wasn't 19 anymore, but that didn't matter. She knew she carried herself with confidence. She started to head back to bed, but paused. There was a time when Bill would have been there to comfort her after a nightmare like that. But he was gone now. Doug was gone too. And anyway, he wasn't Bill. She just didn't want to sleep alone tonight. She walked by Bill Jr.'s room and saw him at his computer. She glanced at him and he understood. By 11 p.m. he needed to be in bed. Kelly's room was the farthest away. Suddenly, she noticed her daughter was curled up under the bedspread. "Kelly, you awake?" Yeah, just barely." "Why so early in bed?" "I've been staying up late the last few nights, emailing and texting. I'm exhausted." Debbie moved closer to the bed. In the soft light, her daughter's face was hard to see. "Mind if I curl up here?" No. What? I just had a bad dream and I don't want to be... It's lonely without Dad, isn't it? Where's Doug?" "In his own bed." "You ever think?" "No. Sometimes things happen and there's no way to go back." She settled into bed, and her daughter cuddled next to her, just like they hadn't done in years. She took in the familiar smell of her daughter's hair and wrapped her arms around her, holding her close. "You know I love you and your brother more than anything else in the world, right?" Kelly didn't answer, as it seemed she was drifting off again. Debbie rested there, thinking about the woman in the grave nearby. Why did it seem like no one ever got to be truly happy in the end? Monday, July 11th, 2005, 11:30 p.m. It had been a while since I visited the Last Call bar on State Road 13 in Mandarin. I could have gone to O'Brien's, but I didn't feel like being around people I knew too well tonight. The bar still had its dark wood and mirrors, with chairs around small tables and a long bar. There was greenery in the corner. The piano bar was quiet, so music played from a sound system. I decided to sit at the long bar and pulled up a stool. The friendly man with thick dark hair introduced himself as the owner, Armando Guzman, and asked what I'd like to drink. I ordered double Bloody Marys with plenty of hot sauce, pepper, and vodka, along with a few olives and lime. After spending 2 hours at Hurley's, lifting the drinks to my lips was a bit of a struggle, but I would manage. He brought my drinks and asked with a grin, "You going to need a police escort tonight?" "No, I'm just going to sip these and drive home carefully. I don't want to overdo it tonight. I have some things on my mind." "Heavy stuff?" "It's quiet, and I'm a good listener if you feel like talking." "Have you ever done something drastic, Armando?" He looked at me thoughtfully and replied, "Even if I had and wanted to share, I think you're not the right person for that conversation." I sipped the drink that was supposed to ease worries and ate an olive, saying, "That's a very diplomatic answer. Not looking to get into politics, are you?" "Anyway, I did something today. Not the first time. A friend asked me how I could sleep tonight. Maybe I can sleep too easily after affecting others. Maybe I've been doing this for too long. It should trouble me more than it does." "Did he deserve it?" "Good question. That's the puzzle. I think so, but I could be wrong. I have been before. But if I don't decide, who will? The choice is mine. I wouldn't want your job. Not many would, and anyone who would want it, I wouldn't want them to have it. In that case, Mr. Maitland, why did you take it? Do you like having that kind of power? No, although some might think that. I took it for my father, so he'd be proud of me, I suppose. A customer came to the other end of the bar, and Armando went to help them. Meanwhile, I wondered why the Bingham case affected me so much. What made this case different? He returned to my stool. Figure anything out? Only that in vino veritas doesn't apply to me. Honestly, I'm feeling a bit lost tonight. I had a lot on my mind. Like what? Have you ever been with someone who seemed way out of your reach? He laughed a little. They all thought so. No, I mean really someone who didn't seem like they would be with you at all. I could see a small spark of understanding in his eyes. Yeah, I knew a woman like that once. Are you still in touch with her? He shook his head, busy polishing a shot glass that was already clean. People like that don't stick around. I think she's married to someone successful now with kids. Do you think about her? Only every day. It could be worse. Worse how? You could have been with her for years and known deep down that she would leave because you weren't really meant to be together. You're too hard on yourself. You have done a lot. Women don't marry for power. They marry real men. Beautiful women often don't stay with those who don't match them. They might choose someone less attractive for stability, but that's not true love. You rarely see mismatched couples last. I made it home without any issues, though the trip is mostly a blur. I finally understood why the Bingham case bothered me. We both had been misled by hope, thinking happy endings were possible. Bingham found a wonderful partner, built a life with her, and embraced being a father, foolishly holding on to the idea of lasting happiness. He did everything right, only to have it all taken away. I met someone amazing in a way that seemed impossible. Our paths had never crossed before. We were total strangers brought together by chance. I knew I wasn't who she usually went after, and I realized it was naive to think our connection could change everything. But those kinds of stories are for children. I felt content. But why shouldn't I? Except I realized I had spent my life waiting for the moment when she would wake up and see that she didn't really love me. It was just gratitude and admiration. That's why, months after the shock of the breakup, I felt a kind of relief. It was like going to the dentist, having a painful tooth pulled, and later realizing that the constant, dull pain I had lived with was gone. I wasn't happy, but the worry was over. The skeptics are right. There are no happy endings, and the saddest part is when you truly love someone. Tuesday, July 12, 2005, 9:30 a.m. I stepped out of the elevator on the 5th floor, dressed in all black. I matched my outfit to the one I wore on Monday. I kind of liked how I looked now. I was getting some curious looks, but I expected that. As I walked by Cheryl's desk on my way to my office, she waved me over. Just as I turned to see what was happening, someone slapped me on the face. It didn't knock me down like it might have before, but it got my attention. I caught the next one in the air with my quicker reflexes and pulled the woman behind the slap toward me. Whoa! She swung at me with her other hand. I blocked her slap. Now I could see her clearly. It was Bingham's older daughter. She was taller, but I was stronger, and she couldn't break free or reach me. Naturally, she reacted with frustration. It was a surprise meeting, and I kept my hold on her. She pulled away and tried to kick, but I was ready and blocked her easily. Miss, whatever your name is, I don't want to have you taken out of here. Please stop. It won't help your father to know that his daughter... My father is gone, you know. I looked at Cheryl. She glanced down as she said, I'm sorry, Bill. I just found out. I was going to tell you, but she reached you first. Gone? I found him in bed this morning when I woke up. I couldn't wake him. Then I found the empty bottle of his pain pills by his bed. He was already cold. I just stared at her, unable to understand what I was hearing. She blinked away tears, and I could see that her tough exterior was starting to break. I don't even know why I was surprised. He lost my mom and my sister and me. He lost my mom, and you pushed my sister away and you were going to send him to jail so he'd lose me too. He didn't have anything left to lose. She was still holding back tears, but she stared at me with what seemed like real curiosity. "Who made you the judge, Mr. Maitland? When did you decide who lives and who dies, who deserves a chance at life or not?" She took a deep breath and calmed down. "You can let me go now. I won't do anything." I released her, and she started to walk by security. Then she stopped. "I know I said I hoped you faced difficulties like my mother did, but I've changed my mind. I hope you live a long life, Mr. Maitland. I hope memories of my father stay with you every night for the rest of your days. If you have any kindness, I hope someone teaches you the pain of loss, just like I felt with my father." I ignored the looks from everyone in the office. I told Cheryl, "I'll be in my office for the rest of the day. No one comes in. No calls go through. That includes the boss. Understand?" She nodded, then asked, "But what about—" "There are 2 other lead assistants in this office and many lawyers. Let someone else try handling things for a day." I locked the door behind me and tried my best to forget there was a world outside. No happy endings. My name is William Maitland. I'm an assistant state attorney in Jacksonville, Florida. Until 3 months ago, I had a job I loved and a life I thought was complete. Since then, I've realized that my personal connections have changed, and I may have lost my passion for my work. To do my job, I have to believe it is worth pursuing because there is a sense of fairness in the world. If there isn't fairness, it is our responsibility to work toward it. This is probably why the last case I worked on has shaken my belief in that idea. A 74-year-old man ended his wife's suffering by giving her a large dose of medicine. He admitted to what he did, but did not mention that he had been seeing a neighbor while his wife was unwell. Did he act out of a wish for freedom? I thought he did. But if his actions were wrong, he simply sped up the passing of someone who was already in pain. I uncovered the affair and a near confession that suggested guilt. He could have faced serious consequences. At the very least, his life was changed forever. One daughter turned away from him, and his relationship with his girlfriend ended when the truth came out. And for what? He was no danger to anyone. At 74, battling severe arthritis, he posed no risk of further harm. A friend who worked on the other side of the law told me I was acting like a judge. He said I could not understand the husband's thoughts at the moment he made his choice. He was right. But if I ignored what he did and the facts I learned, I would be letting sympathy get in the way of fairness. Would I start looking the other way when friends got in trouble, facing the hard choice of what to do? It was hard not to bend the rules to fit my personal feelings. I had heard of other prosecutors who let their emotions influence their decisions. Sometimes they escaped serious trouble. Other times they ended up in difficult situations due to their choices. They usually did not last long in those roles. On the other hand, if I had kept what I knew hidden in some files that no one would ever check, an old man who had suffered for years trying to do right by his wife would still be alive. He would likely be going home to his 2 daughters and, in time, have a good relationship with a woman he had known for many years. His daughters could have mourned their mother together, supported their father, wished him happiness, and stayed close as sisters. Instead, I chose what I thought was right. The old man had lost his life, the daughters had grown apart, and the daughter who stayed by him held a grudge against me, wishing me to feel the pain of loss. Now I sit in my office, the door locked, taking no calls. The daughter did not know that my caring wife had already faced what she wished upon me. I have lost my wife, my children, and my family. Thinking about the old man's sad story makes me question my choices and wonder if my work truly matters. I sit here alone, unsure if I want to keep going in this role. If I can't find purpose in what I do, and I have clearly failed as a husband and father, what is left for me? Tuesday, July 12th, 2005. Noon. Debbie opened the door and noticed right away that something was wrong. The television in the den was on, and she remembered turning it off before she left. She thought about calling the police, but realized there might be another reason for it. "Kelly? BJ? Are you home? Answer me." After a moment, she heard, "Hey, Mom, what are you doing here?" Bill Jr. came out with a carefree smile. He was in shorts and a sleeveless shirt, not at his summer college prep class, which she had worked hard and spent money to enroll him in since he struggled with English. "Are you skipping real school now and summer school too?" "Mom, that class is boring. I'm just missing one day. Have a little understanding. It's almost over anyway. Tommy and Reese are coming over soon, and we're going to see the movie at 8 o'clock with Jessica Alba. What a smooth talker! She thought about scolding him, but decided to hold back. Hey, what are you doing at home? Don't you have classes? She smiled and tried to act relaxed. There are times when it's okay to skip a bit. Doug's coming over, right? Why? He looked unhappy at her answer. Why don't you both keep it low-key? We've got space for that. It's upstairs, in my house. Yours and Dad's. For now, why don't you find something to do to make today better? Sure. By the way, have you heard about Dad? They're really giving him a tough time. What? Dad? What happened? Bill Jr. turned and walked into the den, and she followed him. It would be a while before Doug arrived. She wondered why she felt drawn to him after the busy day yesterday. Maybe I'm a little too relaxed, she thought. But if so, it was nice given that it was one of the most exciting days she had in years, and Doug wouldn't be around forever. Who knows what opportunities might come next? The guy is tough to deal with. Sorry, that might get me in trouble, so let's keep quiet, okay? But really, the old guy has been supporting his wife for years, and finally, he finds some joy outside and someone steps in to make a big deal of it. And that's how things work, it seems. I wonder how that person, I think his name is Maitland, can even sleep at night. I tell you, I wish I could meet him someday. Anyone who treats a sick old man badly must be quite afraid. I'd like to see how he would act around someone his own age, someone who isn't close to death. I notice the phone lines are busy. People are ready to talk about Mr. Maitland, or the Angel of Death, as they're now calling him. He's not an angel. You're on line 1. The man crossed a line. Do you think he should have just walked away? How do you treat someone who's been in such bad shape for years? According to the stories, the old man didn't do anything we wouldn't have done. Maybe his wife was even relieved to go. But not you, right? You'd probably back him up if there was a fight. Oh, but just like him, you might be too afraid to stand up to anyone. Sorry, moving on to the next caller. You're on and you sound reasonable. You believe the Angel of Death is not helpful at all. Yeah, that guy is why many people look down on lawyers. The old man should have been left alone, not forced into that situation. BJ glanced at Debbie and said, I've already received calls about this. They don't think much of Dad, BJ replied. She took the remote from him and turned off the television, which had been playing quietly. I won't listen to that nonsense anymore, and you can tell your friends that none of them or their fathers are half the man your father is. BJ looked at her in surprise. Come on, Mom, Dad is. Okay, but he has done things that led that old man to make bad choices, and you have to admit he isn't exactly a hero. She thought about how Bill must be feeling this morning. She had seen the article Carl Cameron wrote about the trial in the morning paper with that Angel of Death headline. Even though she wasn't supposed to care, she still read every mention of Bill. After being married for 17 years, you know when someone is hurting. She recognized this would hurt him. He wasn't as tough as people thought he was in his job, but he wasn't her husband anymore, or at least he wouldn't be soon. His pain wasn't her concern anymore. Still, you don't really know your father, BJ, she said softly. He looked at her, intrigued. And you don't know the real story of how we met. You've heard bits, but not everything. I've heard the story before. You were crossing a street at UF, and Dad pushed you out of the way and got hurt. He ended up in the hospital, and that's when you got to know him. She moved to the coffee table and sat down, avoiding his gaze. Though he was nearly grown, this still felt awkward. No, it wasn't exactly like that. Well, you're old enough now. I was quite wild when I was your sister's age. I wasn't the kind of person I would want her to be or someone you'd want to know. I was a freshman at UF and joined a sorority. I looked a lot like I do now, just younger, and the guys noticed me. One night, there was a party. A guy from the football team caught my eye, and I thought I really liked him. He invited me to the party where everyone was drinking. I didn't understand much of what was going on, but I was enjoying myself. Then things took a turn, and I realized it wasn't what I had imagined. She paused, staring at the coffee table. Someone pulled me away before things got worse, and I'm thankful for that. When I opened my eyes, I found myself alone. It was a big moment for me. After that, I started making better choices, and that's when I met your father. I was in a small room, and I saw someone in the light. He was moving his arms, and it felt like a strange dream. Then there were many people in the room, shouting, and I started to feel overwhelmed. I couldn't make sense of it all, and it was painful. It seemed like it would never stop, but eventually more people came into the room, and everything was a jumble. Bright lights filled the space, and they wrapped a blanket around me. The next thing I remember, I was in a hospital, surrounded by doctors and nurses taking care of me. Eventually, my mom and dad arrived, but they wouldn't let me leave right away because of my injuries. I felt hurt, both in my body and in my heart, by people I trusted. She finally looked up and met her son's eyes. He seemed more embarrassed than she was. I was just a young girl. I let myself get into a tough situation and it hurt me. It could have been much worse and changed my whole future. I might have even lost the chance to have kids. But your father was there that night. He wasn't part of the fraternity. He was just working there to make some money. He wasn't involved in the party happenings, but he saw me being taken into a back room. He knew something was wrong and wanted to help. He came back and managed to get the guys away from me. He stood in the doorway trying to keep me safe. She closed her eyes. Of course, he couldn't stop everyone, but he did all he could to help me, and I'll always appreciate that. There was so much shouting and people coming out hurt that neighbors called the authorities. When they arrived, I was still in a difficult situation. They took several fraternity members into custody that night. One of those taken by the police later said that they might have stopped if your father hadn't kept getting back up. He said he wouldn't stay down. I learned all this later. The people involved tried to take legal action against your father, or their families did. But when I testified, and there was medical proof and other witnesses confirmed what happened, they decided not to continue. Still, they managed to get him to the best hospital in the city, in very serious condition. She looked up. Her son was watching her, looking confused. I went to see him. His mother, Grandma Maitland, was in the room when I got there. She was not happy to see me at all. Your dad's father had died years ago, and I knew he was all she had left. She said some tough things which I might have deserved and asked me to leave. I came back later when she was gone to check on him. He looked like just a young man, someone I wouldn't even have noticed if I saw him at school. His eyes were shut. He was hooked up to different machines. And he had risked his life to save someone he didn't even know. It felt like something out of a story or a movie. I realized that even with all the praise I'd received in my life, I wasn't worth someone giving their life for. She looked into her son's eyes, which reminded her of his father's. That's the kind of man your father is. He may not have been the best father or husband, but he is a good man. Tears filled her eyes. Bill started to move towards her, but she raised her hand to stop him. It's okay, I'm all right. I just hadn't thought about that for a while. She stood up and went to their bedroom. Then she called Doug. Don't come here today, Doug. What? Why? Deb, I arranged for someone to cover my classes. You know how hard it is to find someone during the summer? I called in favors because I wanted to be with you. She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. Sorry, I just lost the moment. What did he do now? She ended the call. Tuesday, July 12th, 2005 noon. His secretary came out of his office with Dr. Ernst Teller right behind her. He was a tall, thin man with brown hair, cut very short. With his sharp features, intense eyes, and straight posture, he looked like he could be a character from a history book. The only thing missing was a monocle and a fancy cigarette holder. Mr. Maitland, the doctor said in a dry but friendly tone that seemed surprising for his look. Or should I say, the angel of death. It's only been a day, but you're already becoming a legend. What brings you here? Teller was in his late 50s, maybe older, but he looked like someone who could be anywhere between 45 and 65. He had been the main court-appointed psychiatrist for all the 10 years I had worked with the state attorney's office. We called him in when we wanted to understand a suspect's state of mind. We needed to know if there were real reasons for thinking about an insanity defense, or if the defendant was just pretending to be unwell. Teller was skilled at finding the truth. He was not afraid to say someone was sane if they were acting. On the other hand, he had studied some very troubling people, even when public opinion was against them. He still said they could not be held accountable for what they did, no matter how people reacted. He was one of the most honest men I had ever met. Naturally, his private psychiatric practice with wealthy clients, along with coming from a comfortable background, likely gave him the ability to speak freely without worry. "Could I have 15 to 30 minutes of your time, doctor? A legal matter? Personal." He looked at me as if he could see right through me. This often worked wonders with defendants and lawyers. I saw it as just another tool in his professional skill set. But he was effective. He thought for a moment and then spoke to his receptionist. "Abby, hold my calls and let Mr. Smith know I need to reschedule for next week. Just tell him not to rush into anything." Abby smiled and he added, "That's just a joke, Mr. Maitland. Come with me." His office was small, almost cozy. There was a soft chair that showed the mark of his form from many sessions. Behind him was a desk, with a low coffee table between us featuring a black and white ink blot design. An abstract painting with a similar look hung on the wall. I was curious if he would use the "what do you see" approach with me, but I knew he would be direct. He pointed to the couch and I chose to sit instead of lying down. He picked up a pipe, lit it, and began to smoke calmly. "It's your time, Mr. Maitland. You've never asked me for personal advice, so I'm interested in why you're here. It seems likely that it has to do with the Bingham case, the angel of death situation. Still, I thought you were made of tougher stuff. They don't call you the Iceman for nothing around here." When I looked at him with curiosity, he shrugged and said, "Psychiatrists know and hear everything." "That must be why psychiatrists often face challenges in their personal lives," I replied. "Well said. Now, what would you like to discuss? I should mention that Mr. Edwards called me earlier and suggested he might need my help with you. Something about you locking yourself in your office, not taking calls, and acting unlike the Iceman we know." "I think it has to do with the Bingham case. It's just that—" I paused, and he waited silently. Just like lawyers and journalists, he had clearly learned the power of silence. It could affect more people than any other strategy. "This isn't just about the Bingham case. It made me think about some other things in my life." "So this is about your upcoming divorce and your wife's situation?" I looked at him. "I told you, psychiatrists hear and know everything. In this case, so does everyone in the courthouse and the nearby streets. It's not a secret." "That's true, so let's talk. I need to share some background first so you'll understand. I met Debbie at the University of Florida. She was a freshman and I was a junior. She was well-liked and had won some beauty contests. She studied communications and wanted to become a broadcaster. Almost every guy on campus would have wanted to get to know her, but only the athletic types, those who could show off a bit because their families had money, really had a chance. I grew up with a single mom and didn't have much money. I was there on a scholarship because I worked hard and applied for every financial aid opportunity I could find. I received some help as the son of a deceased coal miner. I noticed her around campus, but she probably wouldn't have recognized me. I was nothing special. One night I was working at a party, mostly helping out so others could enjoy themselves. I saw her arrive with a guy from the football team. She seemed to be having a good time, but I sensed that the guy was trying to get her to drink more. People often relied on alcohol to change the mood, sometimes without thinking of how it affected others. You might wonder why I cared when she was just someone I barely knew. So I didn't step in. But I saw her boyfriend and a few other guys guiding her toward a back room in the house, and I knew from working there that it wouldn't be a good place. I guess I was curious, or maybe I thought I could help somehow, so I went back there. I could hear noises coming from one of the rooms. The door wasn't locked, so I opened it and saw her sitting on the bed, surrounded by those guys. She looked upset. I was pretty naive back then, and while I didn't fully grasp what was happening, it was clear that something was wrong. She looked like she was struggling. Later, I learned they had been very unkind to her, hurting her a lot. I looked at Teller, but his face showed no reaction. His eyes didn't give anything away, but I guessed he had heard much worse stories than mine. "Just so you know, Doc, this stays between us. No notes, no discussions with anyone else, and definitely no sharing this later on. Agreed? You have my word. As a doctor and psychiatrist, I value my patients' privacy. Whatever we talk about here stays between us. Since this is informal, there will also be no records. Does that make you feel better?" "Yes, I just wanted to be sure. Anyway, I made a choice then. I like to think I would have helped anyone, but I can't be certain. So I stepped in, pulled one of the guys away and told them I would call the police if they didn't leave. We struggled a bit, and they began yelling. Soon, a few larger guys arrived and pulled me away from the situation. One of them stood over me, telling me to stay out of it or I would be in serious trouble. They warned me to back off. There was not much I could do. Standing up to them would have been risky, but I couldn't just walk away either, so I went to another room and found something to help me, the fireplace poker. Then I went back into the room. 3 guys went to the hospital and their friends put me out of commission. I was unconscious for nearly a week. I might have come around on my own, but a man named Henry Clark heard what happened and decided to help me. He owned a public relations agency in Jacksonville and had the means to assist. My mother had little health insurance, and as a student, I had none. He paid for my medical expenses and called in a favor from a specialist who flew in to take care of me. A week later, I woke up with no lasting damage that anyone could see. A few weeks later, I contacted Clark to ask why he helped. I didn't know him well. He told me he had attended the University of Florida almost 10 years before me and had met his wife during a fraternity event. It seemed to be about fond memories and college life. After I left the hospital, Debbie called one day. She wanted to talk and thank me for what I had done. I should have said no to the conversation. It was just bringing back old feelings, but I didn't have the heart to decline. We met and later went out for dinner. It was clear she thought highly of me, and I should have addressed that sooner. But she was charming, and I was young. To make a long story short, I tried to keep things light at first, but eventually we became a couple. After some time, we got married. Throughout our relationship, I noticed how many other guys admired her. I couldn't take her to events without others trying to get her attention. They often seemed to ignore me. I would have felt hurt every time we went out if I let myself, but I knew she could handle the attention. She told me she loved me, and I always believed her. Yet I knew there were always others interested in her, those who were taller, more attractive, richer, or funnier. If I hadn't been working at the fraternity house that night, I knew I would have never met her like that, and one of the other guys would have been with her instead. I stopped for a moment. I had never talked about these feelings with anyone before. Finally, Teller broke the silence. And you know the story. I think everyone at the courthouse knows it too. She met a charming younger professor at UNF. She might have been involved with him, or she would have been if I hadn't found out about it. It doesn't really matter now. And now she has filed for divorce. The thought that has troubled me for 18 years has finally come true. I repeat, and I leaned in and asked, what troubles me the most is whether I played a part in this. I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Maitland. I've heard that sometimes people can unintentionally create the very thing they fear the most. When I first joined the state attorney's office, one of the earliest cases I worked on was about a Navy officer who had hurt his wife and another person. After returning from an overseas deployment, he heard rumors about an affair and confronted them when he found them together. The case seemed simple, but while I worked on it, I had the chance to talk to him. He said he loved his wife and believed she loved him, until one day he overheard friends making comments about her and another officer. He confronted them, and they brushed it off as a bad joke, knowing he was listening. At first, he believed them, but the doubts stuck with him. It began to trouble him. He started asking his wife about her time while he was away and became more suspicious. He found himself watching her closely, imagining all sorts of possibilities whenever she came home late or went out. Naturally, the more he tried to hold on to her, the more it strained their relationship. Eventually, she sought comfort elsewhere. I remember sitting with him in his cell when he shared this realization. He looked at me and said, I played a part in what happened. I understand that now. I later talked to her friends and they told me she never betrayed me. She truly loved me. I somehow pushed her into this situation. I can't understand why I did that. He served time until 2003, facing many difficulties along the way. The memory of that talk and his expression has stayed with me. I've read enough psychology to understand the idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy where a person brings about the situation they fear. Some say it's a sign of inner conflict. I'm not sure I agree with all those theories, but I have noticed how my own life has changed since I joined this office. I've been pulling away from my wife and family, missing many nights at home and special family events. I see how hard my wife, Debbie, has been working to look good, while I have struggled to stay active. I've noticed changes in myself and how Debbie has looked over time. It became clear that the fun we used to have together was fading. It became routine, as I can best describe it. I looked at the ink blot images on the table in front of me and wondered why all I could see were shifting shapes of light and shadow. She thought I wouldn't notice her nights out with friends. I found out she had started going out dancing with friends, including someone she was close to. Later, I heard her say she wasn't being unfaithful, just that she didn't enjoy spending time with me anymore. She was building a life apart from me. I cannot explain why, but I couldn't even tell the therapist about the emails I found. I wished I had never discovered them. Even if she surprised me with the idea of a divorce, even if I had to pay her, I wish I didn't know what I knew about her and Doug. I didn't try to find out details. It just seemed like she didn't hide it well. Comments were made, people shared what they knew, and I understood. I didn't see how she had given up on us, but I knew she had a life that didn't include me. Any other husband might have noticed something was off. When your wife doesn't want to be with you, that should make you take notice. But I brushed it aside. I never faced her about it. I never tried to be part of that social life. I'd never enjoyed those activities the way she did. More importantly, there were always late-night issues with friends needing help, and it was easier to ignore it. Because what if I confronted her and she said I had to choose between joining her or leaving? I wasn't ready to make that choice. I looked into the therapist's eyes. Did I ruin my marriage? Did my actions push my wife away? It would be hard enough if she fell out of love with me for any reason, but can I accept waking up knowing it wasn't her fault? It was mine. How can I deal with that? Because I loved her, and I still love her. Please, talk to me. He took a few more puffs from his pipe and pressed it down, as pipe smokers tend to do. I believe smoking a pipe is more about a ritual than an addiction. He took another puff, inhaled deeply, and let it out slowly, as if prolonging the moment. Mr. Maitland, have you ever heard the old joke about the cigar? I shook my head. After Freud became famous and changed the field of psychiatry, many young doctors began to follow him without question. You might know that some people believe everything has deeper meanings in our minds. A well-known example is how we view symbols. Many long, straight, and hard objects can represent different things in our unconscious, like a sword, a knife, or any number of simple items. This shows that even common objects can hold different meanings. In his later years, a colleague shared a study with an older man and began discussing what different objects meant in the life of a patient. The older man replied, "Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar." The humor in this is that since this man became famous for his ideas about the unconscious mind, many people, especially those not trained in psychology, tend to overthink everything. While it's true that there may be deeper meanings in our lives, sometimes things are just what they appear to be. He paused for a moment, thinking. You know, Mr. Maitland, you are not my patient, right? Yes. When I see someone as a patient, I usually spend months or even years helping them understand and work through their issues. This can involve different ways of therapy. The one thing that's always true is that there are no quick solutions. You can't explore your deepest thoughts and change who you are in just a few sessions. He looked at me closely, encouraging me to meet his gaze. We have only talked for about half an hour about your life. We have touched on some of your biggest worries and fears. You might have shared things with me that you've never told anyone before. It could be the first time you've faced some of these thoughts. I doubt that even the wisest person could understand someone's inner self and provide answers about their history, beliefs, hopes, and fears in such a short time. And I am not that wise person. I know this may surprise you, but it's true. A slight smile appeared on his face for just a moment before it disappeared. That's a long way to say I cannot answer your question right now. I would need a lot more time to explore it. Even then, I might not have a clear answer. However, I might help you find a path toward an answer that you can accept. But I can tell you this. What you are feeling is real. It's such a common idea that it has become well known, that sometimes a person creates their own fears. I believe there are cases, like the Navy officer you mentioned, where this is exactly what happens. Yet I couldn't even guess if that situation has any meaning in your life, because you see, there are other options to think about. You might have focused all your attention, energy, and love on your work to escape your marriage, which may have unintentionally caused your wife to feel distant. That is very possible. On the other hand, as you grew more engaged in your responsibilities, you may have realized how your efforts affected the lives of others. Maybe, for various reasons, it became harder for you to see your job as just a daily task. If you were a surgeon and lives depended on how dedicated you were, it can be easy to forget how that impacts family life. Most people, even if they disagree, would understand that kind of dedication. Spouses of committed professionals often know what they are getting into. It is likely that you changed from the person your wife fell in love with, which may have altered your marriage in ways she did not expect. In that way, you might have played a part in the changes that led to your wife's growing distance, perhaps even encouraging her to look for closeness elsewhere. But you should ask yourself whether that outcome was entirely bad. If you had known what would happen, would you have chosen to act differently? I looked at him with surprise, wondering if I had understood him right. Would I have made different choices if I had known they would cost me my wife and my marriage? He noticed my expression. I know that sounds strange, but let me explain, please. He took a breath and said, You probably don't know this, but I'm Catholic, Mr. Maitland. I grew up in the faith, and while I've drifted away from the church, I still believe in something greater. There are experiences in my life that make me think there is a higher power. One belief I hold is that many people, even those who are religious, misunderstand their connection with God or a higher power. You see, we often wonder why bad things happen to us, or why our wishes aren't fulfilled, or why relationships struggle. Many believe it's not about what God does for us, but about what we do for Him. In the big picture, our individual lives may seem short. What we should really think about is how we help each other and improve our communities. If we look at it this way, you have spent years serving the greater good. You have fought for justice for those who suffered and offered comfort to troubled families. You have shown kindness to those who deserve it and worked to keep society safe by stopping those who wish to harm others. Yet in doing all that, you've grown apart from your wife and children, possibly losing your marriage and family. That is a deep personal sadness. How many families are whole because you kept dangerous people away? How many families have been able to heal because you gave them what they needed to find peace and move on? I know this may not be what you want to hear, but many people gave up their chance to experience love and care in their lives because they chose to serve. Not everyone can do that, but those who do are truly remarkable. I believe you are one of those people, Mr. Maitland. I hope you can rebuild your marriage and reconnect with your wife and children. I know that would mean a lot to you, but there are larger, more important issues than just one person's happiness. He paused, taking a moment to enjoy the scent of his pipe. I know this isn't what you expected from me, Mr. Maitland. But since this isn't a formal visit and you aren't a formal patient, I'm free to share my thoughts. I leaned forward on the couch, looking down at the ground. Do you know anything about my past, Doctor? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. No, I don't believe we've talked about that. I grew up in West Virginia. My dad was a coal miner. He was a big man and very strong. He went into the mines every day and came home covered in coal dust. He worked 6 days a week, but we always found time to be together on Sundays, going to church or swimming in the lake. He had just bought me a rifle. It was a simple .22, but he promised to teach me how to use it, and we planned to go hunting one day. There were still deer and wild turkeys around, and sometimes he would bring home rabbits for my mom to cook. Then, one winter evening, I'll never forget it. He came home around 7 p.m. It was dark and cold. He had cleaned himself off as much as he could, but his skin was still dirty. Some men came to the door. My dad talked to them for a while before speaking to my mom. Then she began to cry, and he held her close. He put on his heavy coat and was about to leave with the men when he turned around and sat beside me on the couch in front of the television. I was only 8 years old. There's been an explosion in the mine, Billy, he said. You're old enough to understand what that means. I simply nodded because I had heard other kids in school talk about terrible events and how their fathers, uncles, or brothers had gone into the mines and never returned. There are 15 men trapped down there. I'm going to try to rescue them. Don't go, Daddy, please, don't go. He held me close and said, There are little boys and girls, some you know, whose daddies are down there. If it was me, you would want someone to go down and bring me back, wouldn't you? When I didn't answer, he patted my head gently. I have to go, Billy. I know you don't understand now, but one day you will. Sometimes you have to do tough things just because they are the right thing to do. He stood up from the couch and said, "I love you, Billy. Take care of your mom until I get back." He hugged Mom for what felt like a long time, and then walked out with those men. That was the last time I ever saw him. They almost reached the trapped men, but then there was another cave-in. In the end, 28 men lost their lives that day. They couldn't even bring the bodies back. There were 2 more cave-ins, and the company finally shut down the mine because it was too dangerous and costly to keep it open. We had a service, but there was no one to bury. The next year, Mom moved to Jacksonville. She said it was for a job, but I always thought she just couldn't stand being near the mines anymore. I looked up at Teller. I was crying, but I didn't care. It was as if I was back in our living room for a few moments. I could still feel my father's presence. "So you tell me, Doc, why do some people do what's right no matter what it costs them? It cost my dad his life. It cost me my marriage, my kids, the only woman I've ever loved. It's really changed my life too, in a way." Teller leaned back and took a breath, letting out a cloud of fragrant smoke. "Mr. Maitland, I wish I had the answer to questions like that, but as the saying goes, that is above my pay grade. Tuesday, July 12th, 2005, 2 p.m. "Hello, Debbie." "Hi, Mom. Why are you calling me at the house right now?" "I called your school, but they told me you took a half-day off. Is something wrong? Are the kids okay?" "Yes, they're fine. Well, Bill Jr. is skipping summer school classes again. I caught him, but I'm letting him be this time." "Why are you home at this hour, then?" You took the day off to be with that man." "He has a name, Mom. It's Doug. And yes, it's not really your business, but I did take time off to see him." "Is he there now?" She sniffed and said, "No, Mom. He's not here. If it makes you happy, he won't be here today." "You're crying. What did he do?" "Mom, he didn't do anything. How did you even know I was crying?" Mystic Mama knows. All sees all. "I've known you for nearly 40 years, baby. I know when you're upset. I can hear it in your voice. Is it Doug or is it Bill? Have you heard the mean things they're saying about him? And that article in the paper? Not fair at all." "Mom, it's just a lot of things. I think I'm about to start my period. You know how I can feel sometimes." "Are you happy now?" "What?" "You ended your marriage after nearly 20 years. You've turned your back on a man who always supported you, for someone new who seems just like the others who have come after you over the years. Was it worth it, Debbie?" "Oh, come on, Mom. Are you my mother or his? Do you ever take my side? Have you supported me in any way since all this started? You should be behind me. It's tough enough with the kids and people at work watching me, but you are my mom. You're the last person I need judging me right now. Why don't you try to see him in a different way? I'll always be on your side. I support you now, but I don't think what you're doing is good for you, for the kids, and especially not for Bill. He is a nice man." "Yeah, and so is the Pope. I don't want to be married to the Pope either. Nice people aren't always easy to live with, Mom. You don't see what happens in this house." "I've been a good mother and a good wife. I cared for my kids and my husband for nearly 20 years. I kept them happy. But what about me, Mom? Don't I deserve to be happy? With someone who wants me? Someone who makes me feel good about myself? Someone who reminds me of my worth?" "I know you've had a good marriage with Daddy, and I've heard enough to know that's not an issue for you. But it has been a big problem in my marriage. You should have talked to Bill more." "Yeah, I should have made him notice how people looked at us together. I should have made him see how others were drawn to me." "You say I should have done this or that. What about Bill? What about the problem I never should have faced? If I had known 20 years ago what I know now?" There was a long silence, and she tried to calm herself. Where did that anger come from? For a moment, she felt deep frustration, and it was something new for her. "There's something wrong with you, Debbie. Where did that anger come from? You ended things with him. He should be the one upset. It almost sounded like Clarice." "I dream about her sometimes." "I know, sweetie. I think about her sometimes, too. But you were always closer to her. It's normal to remember her. But those words, they sounded like Clarice talking about Frank." "I don't know, Mom. Sometimes I get so frustrated with Bill. I know I have reasons, but..." "Debbie, Bill is not Frank. Don't forget that. I know Clarice was negative about men. I heard some of it. I also know you picked up on that, but Clarice had her own struggles. Frank isn't the only one who has moved on. Most women create new paths for themselves. Clarice couldn't let go. She had her own troubles. I know she tried to pass her views about men on to you. It made things hard for your father, too. I never told you or your sister, but when I heard what happened, I went to find him. I saw him leaving, and I told him he had to let me in or I would stay right there. He didn't say a word, but I could tell he was upset. Clarice was your father's younger sister. He helped care for her, and her passing really affected him. But I reminded him that she was gone. If he gave in to those feelings, he'd lose me and both you girls, too. Frank might not have been great, but he wasn't alone in his mistakes. Clarice didn't have to let her life fall apart because of him. We all tried to support her, but some people are just hard to reach. I know, but sometimes I picture her the way she was. Before. I do, too. Remember, I knew her a lot longer than you. But when I heard you just now, I felt worried. It was like I was listening to Clarice. Are you sure that— No, Mom. I know that Bill isn't Frank. He never cheated on me. I had my issues with him, but not that. I don't know why I was so upset earlier, but I don't need a therapist. We're just having a rough time now. I'm facing something that scares me. Doug is just a friend, no matter what you think. I just want to talk to Bill. He's been the one person I could always share everything with for nearly 20 years. But he hangs up on me when I try to call. Do you blame him? No, I guess not. But we need to talk someday. We'll be good divorced parents. I know we will. I just wish I could talk to him now. So many things have happened. I said and did things I shouldn't have, but I want him to understand why. Well, it's a shame you two aren't talking. I think today is one of those days he could really use a friend. I know, Mom. Maybe. Look, let me go. I'll talk to you later. Love you. She called Cheryl. How is he, Cheryl? As bad as I've ever seen him. He locked himself in his office and wasn't taking any calls from anyone. About noon, he left and wouldn't say where he was going. He just came back an hour or two ago. I've never seen him like this. Thanks, Cheryl. Tuesday, July 12th, 2005, 3 p.m. The knocking started, and I ignored it. Only a few people had dared to knock before. I wondered who it could be this time until I recognized a familiar voice. Bill, open up. Come on, if I have to, I'll bring someone in to help. He might actually do that. Oh, well. Time to face the music. I got up, unlocked the door, and returned to my desk. I leaned back and waited. Why didn't you just go home? You could have escaped this place and avoided all this trouble. I've had to seal this place up to avoid stories about top state attorney having a breakdown. And that's not just for you. I'd hate to have you working on cases with every defense attorney trying to have you taken off because of your situation. I have issues? For you, those are issues. You don't shut yourself away and close off the world. I'm just having a tough day, boss. Everyone deserves a break every now and then. As for why I didn't go home, I don't have a place to go anymore. This is as close as it gets for me. He leaned back against the doorway. Sometimes I forget how big he is. He almost filled the whole door frame. In his basketball days, he was lean and quick. Now, nearly 40 years later, he was just big. I wanted to ask you about that. I called Teller earlier. I heard you saw him by yourself. Did it have anything to do with this? I had trusted Teller. After all those years, he could read my thoughts. He didn't say anything, but remember, there are eyes everywhere. No, it was personal, mostly. I want you to come upstairs before you leave. Myra will have some papers for you. She'll explain everything. About what? You're leaving here Friday morning on the Bonne Chance. It's a cruise ship mainly for French guests, but they get people from all over. It can hold about 1,800 guests, so it's fairly small but very nice. They just docked here yesterday and will set sail Friday. They only stop by every few years. A cruise? Friday? Look, you must think I'm losing it to spend that much money on me, but— No buts! The booking is done. I'm spending a lot on you for 1 week. I'm hiding the costs so I can tell state auditors that I'm not just treating an important staff member who's having a tough time to avoid more trouble, but that's the plan. Just go and enjoy. I shook my head. The whole idea was more ridiculous than he thought I was. I hadn't been on a cruise in nearly 10 years. There always seemed to be something more important going on. No, boss. Thank you. But it doesn't make sense. Work doesn't pause just because I'm dealing with personal matters. And what kind of vacation would I have by myself, worrying about work and unable to relax? It wasn't a request and it wasn't optional. I've booked the cruise, you are going, and that's final. I looked at him in disbelief. You know I appreciate you, but I'm not going on a cruise simply because you think I need a break. He just looked at me, and a bit of the nice guy image faded to show a more serious side. Bill, you are one of the best prosecutors I've ever known, and I've been in this job a long time. You're important to this office, you're strong and dedicated, but you're not invincible. Something about the Bingham case is weighing on you. It's likely affected you more due to everything else going on in your life. Regardless, it's taken a toll on you. I'm worried that you won't be able to recover without some time off. You won't look for help, and I know you spent only a short time with Teller, which isn't enough to change things. So I'm trying to help you get away from everything for a little while. Take some time for yourself. I'm thankful for this, boss, I really am, but just going away for a week, it's not a suggestion. It's an order. I value you a lot, but if you're not on that ship when it leaves on Friday, don't come back to work on Monday. I'll miss you, but you'll be in trouble if you don't get yourself together. I won't just let you go. I'll make sure you can't find a similar job anywhere else. I've been around this business for a long time, and I know a lot of people. You would do that to me after 5 years? Trust me, when you get ready to step onto the ship, I'll have someone waiting to check your bags to make sure you're not bringing any work-related files. You'll have email and internet on the ship, and you can take your laptop, but you won't be allowed to talk to anyone from this office. I don't want you dealing with any work matters. I don't want you thinking about cases. I don't want you discussing any cases. If something urgent comes up, we'll manage without you. Are you really serious about this? Yes. Bill, I don't care what you do on this trip. Enjoy some nice food, relax and take in the sights, walk around and look at the stars, think things over and sort them out. Just forget about work. He turned to leave. You know, Dallas, I appreciate this. I know you mean well, but it's not going to solve anything. The issues I have a week away isn't going to fix them. He looked back at me and smiled. Who knows? It might feel good to let loose for once. You've been so focused on work and other people's issues for too long that you've forgotten how to enjoy life. Just have some fun and let yourself be surprised. Good luck. Tuesday, July 12th, 2005, 4 p.m. My name is William Maitland. I'm an assistant state attorney in Jacksonville, Florida. Until 3 months ago, I had a job I loved and a marriage that I thought was strong. Now, my marriage is falling apart and I'm trying hard to keep my work life together. I faced a setback yesterday when I unintentionally played a role in an older man's sad choice. It hit me hard for many reasons. I had a short moment of sadness, but that was all the time I had, so I had to accept what I could. Now, before the day of reflection officially ended, I was back at work. I was going over cases coming up in the next few weeks. My supervisor had left me the rest of the day and Wednesday to finish my preparations. On Thursday, I planned to work for a few hours before taking the rest of the day off to get ready for an unexpected cruise. I had been thinking about leaving my job as a prosecutor after 10 years, but when it almost slipped away from me, I realized I wasn't ready to move on. I knew there were nearly 20 lawyers in my office, some with more experience than me. But the habits I had built over the years were hard to shake off. I still felt responsible for making sure all the cases were handled well. Many people depended on us. If I or the other lawyers made mistakes, it could really affect their lives. I wouldn't be here next week, but I wanted to make sure everything was organized before I left. I heard my office door open. Since my boss had suggested I keep it unlocked, that's what I did. But only a few people would come in without knocking. I looked up and my heart raced. We locked eyes and held the gaze for a few moments. You should have called. You would have just hung up on me anyway. If you know that, then why are you here? We've known each other for almost 20 years. I know you've been hurt. Cheryl told me you've shut yourself in here, and that's not like you. So what are you going to do? Fix things? She looked down at my desk instead of at me, almost turning red. There was a time she could always cheer me up, but those days were gone. I thought you might want to talk. There was a time. That time has passed, Debbie. What makes you think you can just come in here and act like nothing has changed? You changed my life, and now you want to make it better. We used to talk when we were close. We're not close anymore." I looked at her. She wore a nice green blouse and skirt that suited her well. I thought I was moving on from her, but I was wrong. The only way to truly get over her was to put as much distance between us as possible. "Look around the office, Debbie. Tell me what you see and what you don't." She glanced at my desk, the bookshelf behind me, the coffee table, and the walls. There were commendations and photos with important people displayed. On my desk were 4 pictures of my kids, Bill Jr. and Kelly, from when they were 2 years old, and some taken more recently. I also had a large picture from one of the few I had of my parents when I was about 4. It took her a moment to take it all in. "What's happened? Bill, it doesn't change what we had." "Of course it does. The picture of us is gone. I meant to keep it safe, but it got damaged." I looked into her eyes, hoping she felt the impact of my words. "If you go to my condo, you won't find any pictures of us, or even of you. I didn't take anything from our photo albums. If you look in my wallet, you'll find only pictures of the kids. You're not in them anymore." She blinked, and I hoped for a hint of feeling from her. "Removing my picture doesn't erase what we had. It was real. It happened. Remember that Clint Eastwood movie we watched? The one about the retired fighter who takes on a tough job? It starred Morgan Freeman. There was a powerful line where he says that when you take a man's life, you take everything he has and everything he could have had. You did the same to us. You spoiled everything we shared. I didn't keep any reminders because I can't look back at those days without thinking of those emails, without seeing you with him. Without those thoughts, I can't shake. I can't recall any happy moments we had because those messages always come up. You changed my whole life and affected the last 20 years greatly." She shook her head. "Those tough emails." She looked at me and said, "Why did you save them and read them? If you hadn't, you wouldn't have come to UNF. Soon, I would have told you our marriage wasn't working. You wouldn't have known about Doug, and you wouldn't feel this way. You could have moved on, and we would have our memories without this hurt. I don't resent you, Debbie. I just can't stand to look at you. I can't bear the memories of our life together, but I don't hold a grudge. I wish I could. The truth is, I still care about you. Perhaps I always will. But that might change. It doesn't hurt as much now, and it has only been 3 months. I think eventually I'll get to a point where I won't feel anything at all for you." I didn't understand why she seemed hurt. She was the one who chose to end things. "Now you start the life you should have had from the beginning, Deb. Before you let other things distract you. If not for BJ and Kelly, I wish I had never met you, and you'd have had the life you wanted. A life with money and status, not tied down by someone like me." She looked at me as if I were speaking another language. "If it helps ease your guilt, I've known this was coming for 20 years. I wasn't surprised by Doug. In some ways, I feel relieved. Now you won't have to pretend you loved me." She moved quickly, still fit from her gym time. My own training had sharpened my reflexes, and I caught her hand before she could react. "Don't do that, Debbie. You don't know how close I've been to losing my patience. Don't push me." Her eyes burned with intensity. "Our marriage is over, and I know you ended it. But don't say I never loved you or that those early years were fake. I know what I felt back then. I truly loved you. I know you weren't perfect. I could have taken a different route, but I loved you. You were kind and caring, showing me more love than anyone else ever had, and I felt safe with you. Love isn't just about closeness. That's part of it, but I never complained about how we showed our love. You made me feel complete, until you chose your job over me." I remembered what Teller had told me. I could try to explain my actions, but wasn't she right? She didn't sign up for a marriage where she felt unimportant until I got a job with less pressure. I could explain how I let my marriage fade. It was like the frog in warm water that slowly heats up. The frog doesn't notice the danger until it's too late. I couldn't recall a moment when I decided my job was more important than my wife. I never meant to prioritize my career over her. But knowingly or not, that's how I lived for too long. I had stepped out onto a shaky branch, trying to balance work and marriage. Eventually, the branch broke. Whatever feelings she had for me are now gone. She was with someone else, and if I knew her, she was probably happy. The emails she sent lingered in my mind. What I said was deeper than I understood. I loved her, but I couldn't stand to look at her. It was easier now than it had been 3 months ago. If I could just keep my distance, maybe I could find some peace. I had held her hand. I let go and took a step back. Consider me okay, Debbie. You did what you had to and came here. Thank you. Now you need to go. Bill, there are no words, Debbie. You can't fix this. Let it go. I'm fine now. So you won't worry, and Cheryl doesn't need to tell you. I'll let you know I'm leaving town Friday. Edwards told me to take a week's vacation, a cruise. I'm not planning anything big. I'll probably just look at the stars and relax. Tell Kelly and BJ that I probably won't call from the ship, but I'll reach out when I'm back. She looked at me for a long moment, and I wondered what she was thinking. You lose weight, start looking really good, and go on vacation. After our marriage fell apart. Why did you wait until now? There really was no answer, and she turned and left without saying anything more. Tuesday, July 12th, 2005, 4:30 p.m. I came out of the elevator and went to Myra's desk in front of the big oak doors that led to the boss's office. I often wondered if she had shared special moments in every piece of furniture in that large office. It was hard to believe he hadn't been with her everywhere he could. They might meet outside of work, but Edward's wife of nearly 40 years was known to be very jealous. She was also a former member of the U.S. Olympic shooting team in 1976. People said she still went to the shooting range to show younger officers her skills. Everyone wondered how Edward managed to stay safe with such a beautiful secretary on one side and a very protective and skilled wife on the other. The guess was that he had found a way to keep his wife happy, and he was careful not to meet with Myra where his wife could see them. Nobody would probably ever know what really happened until the police were called to look into his situation. But this made for lively conversations at the office. Myra snapped her fingers, pulling me back to reality. "Earth to Bill! Where were you?" I looked into her eyes, a bright shade of green, and then down at her blouse, which looked tight, before looking back up at her eyes. "Sorry, I was lost in thought. Do you have something for me? What do you mean by that?" I tried to stay focused, but for a moment my eyes wandered. However, I quickly got a grip on myself. "I believe you have some tickets and other documents for me." "Oh, yes." She turned to grab a manila envelope from her desk. When she did, something fell, and I instinctively reached to catch it. She looked surprised when I opened my hand to show the round button. "Cheap material. This keeps happening," she said. "It did its best, Myra. Some things just can't hold together." "You're nice," she replied with a playful smile. "For a married man. Anyway, I didn't think you noticed." "Is there any man who hasn't? You've done a good job pretending for 5 years. I really thought you were too busy with your wife to notice." "I noticed, but it's like dreaming of the moon. You can't go there, and you're further away than the moon." I had my hand on her desk, and she placed her hand on mine. It felt warm. "You've been out of touch. You know people have gone to the moon, right?" I didn't know how to respond. My mind felt empty. "Is that envelope for me?" She took her hand away and handed me the manila envelope with the other hand. "There are tickets, confirmation papers, and some brochures about what to expect on the bonne chance. Everything you need to take with you, except some clothes. I hope you have a good time." I took the manila envelope and thought about the last time I went on a cruise 10 years ago to Hawaii, right before I started this job with the state attorney's office. "I don't know. It will be different. Because you'll be going alone." The smile faded from my face. "I haven't said anything because we don't see each other much, but your wife is not treating you well. I know you might not want to hear it now, but you will be fine. You've always been a good person, but now..." "Now what?" "You look good." I probably turned red at that. I'm bald, a bit heavy, and getting older, unless they changed what attractive means. "Bald looks fine on you. If you think you're heavy, you haven't looked in a mirror lately. You look confident, and that's appealing." "Are you flirting with me?" "No," she said, placing her hand gently on mine again. "I don't get involved with married men. But when things change..." Anyway, about the cruise. The name of the ship means good luck, right? "You might find something interesting. Strange things happen sometimes." "That would be quite odd. Thanks for the kind words, Myra, even if you're just being nice. I'll see you in a week and a half." I waited for the elevator. Just before the doors opened, she added, "Oh, by the way, Bill, Mr. Edwards doesn't want you to think about work or cases now, but that doesn't mean you can't think about the people here, or someone special." She had a way of speaking that left me speechless. I stepped into the elevator without looking back. Friday, July 15th, 2005, 5 p.m. I rested my elbows on the railing and looked down at the dock. People moved around like tiny ants, waving and shouting to those standing near me at the rail. The ship's horn echoed, and it began to glide smoothly away from the dock where the Bonne Chance had been for 4 days. Even the summer heat of Jacksonville gave way to ocean breezes that tossed hats and papers around. The air smelled of mud and rain, and dark clouds gathered on the horizon. It was likely to rain, possibly a storm tonight, as the weather report said a strong system was heading for Jacksonville, more powerful than the usual summer storms after days of scorching heat. There were couples and groups of women without men, but few groups of men without women. Mothers with babies mingled with several groups of teenagers, all looking to connect. Whoever said lonely in a crowd clearly understood the feeling. I looked around at the families, at the couples hugging, and at the groups of single women watching the men in the crowd. What was I doing here? I always enjoy this part of the trip. Leaving is, I don't know, it's exciting. I've done this 3 times in my life, and I never get used to it. I glanced over at a man and a woman next to me at the railing. He was tall, had dark brown hair, and wore a friendly smile. I guessed he was some sort of businessman. The woman with him was shorter, in sensible shoes, slim with long blonde hair and rosy cheeks. She looked like a doll. From the way she held on to him, they seemed to be on their honeymoon, or maybe a second honeymoon, as he appeared several years older. I looked up at the clouds. "It looks like it might rain. If it does, it could get a little bumpy tonight. Be careful moving around. It's easy to slip." He smiled. "We're easy to spot?" "I guess so. It is our honeymoon. I just married this wonderful lady." He reached out his hand. "You look familiar. Have we met before?" "No, I just have one of those faces. I hope we see each other again. I'm Dan Jenkins. I run an insurance agency in Jax, and this is my wife, Caroline. By the way, how's your homeowner's insurance?" He saw my expression and laughed. "Sorry, I couldn't help it. Everyone gives me that look when I mention insurance. But I'm off work for the next week. Too busy to sell anything anyway." As he spoke, he smiled and leaned toward Caroline. We seemed to be about the same age, but I felt much older. "I'm Bill Maitland. Nice to meet you both." "Well, good luck," I said, stepping away as if I had somewhere else to be. A large dog was staring right at me with an intense gaze that sent chills down my spine. It was a strange, instinctual fear, similar to what I felt now. I tried to shake it off and focus on the lively scene around me, the cheerful chatter, the laughter of children, but that unsettling feeling lingered. I wanted to blend into the background, to go unnoticed in this sea of joy and celebration. Instead, I found myself drawn to that gaze. Feeling out of place, I shifted my focus to the horizon where the ocean met the sky. The beauty of the moment momentarily distracted me from my thoughts. I took a deep breath, letting the salty air fill my lungs, hoping it would ground me. In the distance, the ship's horn sounded, signaling its upcoming departure. The crowd's excitement grew, yet I remained on the sidelines of their joy, a lone figure among a crowd filled with connection and warmth. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, but there was something comforting in knowing I was just a quiet observer in this bustling space. The excitement of setting sail and the adventure waiting beyond the horizon sparked my own desire to explore, even if I felt a bit out of place. The sight of big dogs like Bernards that help people in the mountains made me think of bravery. But this one was just a huge mixed-breed dog, showing its large teeth and growling softly as it walked slowly toward me. That day I felt a shiver of fear at the sight of the imposing animal. I was scared then. Today, however, I felt something different. I wasn't scared of the dark-haired cruise ship staff member who was looking at me with a strong gaze. I thought I hadn't seen her before, but from that distance it was hard to tell. Perhaps her eyes were on someone else nearby. Even as I tried to make sense of it, I could feel her gaze on me, filled with mystery. Still, there was no point in having a staring match with a stranger. I glanced around and pretended to be interested in a little boy and girl whose parents were trying to keep them close. But I couldn't help but look back to the next deck up. She was gone. Other staff were chatting and moving about, but the spot where she had been was empty. I stood there for a moment, wondering what had just happened. Could I have imagined it? Maybe she was just watching the passengers, and her glance had caught me for a second. Nothing more than that, my imagination running wild. But deep down, I knew what I had felt. It hit me that the big man might have asked the ship's staff to watch over me during the cruise. I could see him doing that, wanting to make sure I stayed out of trouble. It would be awkward to ask if they had been told to keep an eye on me. I had arrived at the ship at 11 a.m., as I was told. I brought 2 suitcases. One had clothes I had hurriedly packed. I wasn't too picky about what to wear. I had thrown in a suit just in case I wanted to join the formal dining room, along with shorts, slacks, and a swimsuit, though I doubted I'd swim at any pools. The other suitcase had my laptop, some important papers about upcoming cases, and a couple of novels. I had just settled into my suite, one of the best rooms on the ship, but still smaller than $1 million beach house in Miami, when I heard a knock at the door. I wondered who it could be, and when I opened it, I asked, "Is he really going to do it?" Jessica Stevens smiled and nodded. "He told me to bring whatever court papers you have or not to return." I realized he knew I shouldn't let Jessica risk her job by bringing documents aboard the ship. I pointed to the case with the laptop. "Please open it and check inside. You can look through the other one too, but it should only have clothes. Feel free to check me if you need to." She almost blushed, but just shook her head. "If you'd said that night at O'Brien's." "Let's skip the jokes and get what you need. Then you can go unless you want to stay with me here for a week." "That's not fair, Bill. You know how long it's been?" "Talk to Cameron. He won't change his mind. Sometimes I really don't like him. Take charge of the situation." She blushed a little and started looking through my suitcases. When she finished, she had sorted through paperwork on many open cases. "Have a nice trip, Bill." I gave her a friendly gesture on the cheek. "Remember what I said about taking charge?" She waved as she walked out. It seemed like the big man was serious about me taking time off. He might be just as serious about having someone watch me to make sure I didn't leave the ship unexpectedly. I walked inside the ship, found an elevator, and went to Deck 3 or Le Fleur and the purser's office. After meeting with 3 junior officers, I finally spoke with Alejandro Torres, the chief purser. I asked him if we could talk privately. "Mr. Maitland, William Maitland." "Mr. Maitland, I assure you we can discuss anything in front of my staff." "Senor Torres, I have been a lawyer for nearly 20 years. I'd like to discuss a matter that might involve legal issues. Are you sure we can't talk alone?" He stared at me for a moment, then said, "Everybody out. You too, Mr. Maitland, come back to my office." We went through a door into a small office where he sat behind a narrow desk. "What is this about, Mr. Maitland?" I sat down across from him. "You acted like you didn't know who I was. Let me ask you clearly. Have you received any orders to keep an eye on me?" He paused, stared at me for a moment, and replied, "Do you have any idea how suspicious that sounds, Mr. Maitland?" Then he added, "Let me be clear, Mr. Maitland. I honestly don't know who you are other than an American who thinks very highly of himself." I believed he was being honest. "If I made a mistake, I apologize. It's just, do you know why one of your female staff members might be watching me?" He shook his head. "So you think one of your female staff was looking at you?" "Well, there is more to it than that, but yes, that's part of it. We are going to get up and leave now, Mr. Maitland. I hope you have a great trip. All I can say is, as you Americans say, get over yourself. A female staff officer looked at you and you turned that into a big deal about her attention on this cruise. Do you realize there are many reasons why a female staff member might look your way? Maybe she found you interesting or reminded her of someone she knows. Let's be reasonable. Why not go enjoy the sights as we set sail, taste the food, and have a good time?" He stood up to signal the end of the conversation and added, "And if you happen to see this young lady again, why not just ask her?" If anyone could feel more foolish, I didn't know how. But as I left the office, I still felt that she had been looking at me for a reason. That thought would probably stick with me for the rest of the cruise until I figured out why. I wasn't very curious about watching the ship sail away, so I spent a few hours exploring. I checked out the casino, the pools on Deck 4, various theaters for live shows and movies on the next deck, the restaurants on the 4th, 5th, and 6th decks, and the gym on the 7th deck. Then I went back to my room on the 8th deck, which was the highest. I checked the bar, which had some very expensive bottles of cognac and a Napoleon brandy that cost around $500. Why not? If the big man wanted me to leave my old life behind, I might as well go for it. I opened the brandy, poured a generous amount into a crystal glass, and enjoyed the smell for a moment before tasting it. I usually liked Bloody Marys or vodka when I felt adventurous, but I had tried brandy before, and I thought it was one of the best drinks. I ended up pouring myself another couple of glasses and felt drawn to the comfy bed beneath a large ceiling mirror. When I opened my eyes again, it was 9 p.m., and the ship was rocking gently. The weather forecasts were right. We were heading into rougher seas. I was wearing slacks and a light short-sleeve shirt, but since it felt cooler outside, I changed into a black turtleneck. I thought it looked a bit nicer. I made my way to Le Champagne on Deck 5, where a sign in fancy letters pointed out its location. Most cruise ships might have a pizza place, but here they served thick-cut ham, chilled oysters, and a variety of cheeses from simple goat cheese to more specialty types. I enjoyed some ham, a half-dozen oysters, and tasted a few different cheeses. I knew I would have to work out for at least an hour at the gym, but it was worth it. Everything I tried was wonderful, which I should have seen coming. The French may have strong opinions about many things, but they definitely know how to enjoy good food. While I was tasting an oyster with hot sauce, I saw a slender brunette figure moving past the door of Le Champagne. I quickly got up and headed toward the entrance, but by the time I got there, she was gone. There were several paths she could have taken, and it was possible she wasn't the person I thought she was. I went to the gym, and even though it was late, almost 10 p.m., one male staff member was still there. I received a soft towel and set it aside while I worked out for an hour on machines that were similar to what I was used to. After months of regular exercise, it felt great to lift weights until my muscles felt tired. I realized how much I missed daily workouts when I couldn't do them. After showering and getting dressed, I walked up to the top deck. I opened the door to the outside railing, and the rain whipped against my face. It felt cold and harsh. I pushed the door open and stepped outside. The wind was strong, but I made my way to the railing. I held on tight and looked down nearly 100 feet to the dark ocean below. White caps rolled beneath the ship as it moved up and down. Even though the storm hid the moon and stars, the foam from the waves was easy to see, and there was a faint glow on the water. I should have gone back inside since I was getting soaked, and the storm was hitting my face and head hard. However, I couldn't bring myself to leave. I wondered if I had ever seen anything more beautiful in my life. I noticed a tall structure near the front of the ship that I had visited earlier. It could only be reached from the 6th deck and had a small lounge that a crew member said was usually off-limits to most guests. It opened to a railing almost directly in front of me. After a moment, I noticed a figure in the darkness leaning against the railing and looking toward the horizon. Even in the shadows, I could see it was a slender shape. When the door behind her opened briefly and someone called to her from inside, a small light showed her features, revealing a blue and gold uniform with a clear raincoat. In that quick flash of light, her eyes sparkled, and I realized it was my mystery acquaintance. She looked at me from across the distance. It might have just been my imagination, but before the door closed again, leaving her in the dark, I thought I saw a hint of a smile. We stood on our separate decks, gently swaying with the waves, and it felt like time had stopped. I don't know how long I stood there, but it felt as if I had left everything I knew behind. My father, my job, my wife, my children. The sea stretched out, dark and calm, with a figure standing far away from me. She turned away from the railing, opened a door, showing her short dark hair. Then she left, and the light disappeared with her. I returned to my luxurious room and fell asleep as soon as my head hit the soft pillow. Saturday, July 16, 2005, 10 a.m. The next day, I slept in until 10 a.m., missing breakfast and our arrival at Key West. I stopped by Le Champagne and had a small bite of pâté on a cracker that was probably very rich. I wasn't eager to explore Key West again. I had been there twice with my family, so I stayed on the ship instead. I went to the casino and quickly lost $500. Next, I checked out an entertainment area. I watched newlywed couples answer fun questions from the staff, saw a new Bollywood movie with English voiceovers, worked out in the gym for an hour, and finally arrived at my first formal dinner. By then, the ship was getting ready to head to Nassau. I was seated next to a woman with red hair and a bright blue dress. She smiled at me often, and I tried to smile back. At our table were a couple in their 70s celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, a trip paid for by their 7 children and 35 grandchildren. There was also a younger woman in a simple yellow blouse and skirt with her husband, a tall man with sandy hair who seemed quite interested in the redhead. The redhead kept looking over at me, and halfway through dinner she said, "You're Mr. Maitland, right?" I nodded and answered, "Yes, ma'am. I think you saw something in the newspaper." She looked confused and said, "My husband Andy and I just returned from a business trip to Chicago before my father funded this cruise. I didn't see the story, but I recognize you. I've seen you at the courthouse and even watched some trials you were involved in." "Sorry, I'm not being very polite. I'm Cindy Matthews, and this is my husband Andy. My brother-in-law does some volunteer work at the courthouse and mentioned you." "You are a very good lawyer," she added. She nudged her husband and said, "Say hello, Andy," and he reluctantly looked away from the redhead. "You've seen him in action then, Miss Matthews?" he asked. As I looked up, I saw the woman who had caught my attention standing behind me. I turned my chair to face her. She wore blue and gold with a small emblem on her left side, and I took a moment to observe her. Sitting made it hard to tell her height, but I guess she was around 5'6" or 5'7". She had a wide forehead, a strong nose, big eyes, and full lips. Her hair was so black it had a hint of blue. I looked into her eyes for a moment and found the color difficult to define. Overall, she was a lovely woman, so why had she been watching me? "Excuse me for interrupting. I am interested in the law and couldn't help but join your conversation. You mentioned Mr. Maitland is a lawyer in Jacksonville. Does he handle important cases? I'm sorry. Mr. Maitland, do you work as a civil lawyer or a prosecutor?" Her English was clear and precise, with a slight French accent. "Important cases, miss. I mostly deal with serious matters, although I've worked on many other important issues." She gave me a curious look. I answered her unspoken question. "I've visited France a couple of times for legal meetings and cases that connect France and the USI, know a bit about your legal system." In response to her earlier question, Cindy said, "Oh yes, he is very good. He is strong and clear in his arguments and makes juries think about the people involved. Often others forget about them, but Mr. Maitland never does. Though," she added with a small frown, "I didn't recognize you right away with your head shaved. You look quite different." "Yes," my mystery woman said, "Mr. Maitland is indeed a striking man." "You know who I am, but I don't know your name or anything about you. That doesn't seem fair, does it?" She extended a slim hand to me. I took it and shook it. "I am Aline Desjardins, Mr. Maitland. I am one of 3 assistant cruise directors. I spend my time making sure that passengers with special needs have those needs met." "Sounds like an interesting job. All you'd have to do is stop by my cabin and we could talk more about it," Andy said, laughing. Cindy Matthews gave her husband a look that could have melted ice, but he just ignored her. I noticed he was on his 5th or 6th mug of some strong German beer. He kept staring at Aline in a way that made me uneasy. Aline looked at him with little respect and said, "I would think your wife should be able to take care of those needs." Andy was about to respond, but this time he noticed his wife's glare and thought better of it. She turned her gaze to me and said, "I have to go, but I hope we meet again during this cruise, Mr. Maitland. Feel free to reach out if I can help with anything." I hadn't let go of her hand, and I held it as she began to turn away. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. I noticed a diamond sparkling in a ring on her left hand. "Have we met before, Miss Desjardins?" She shook her head and replied, "No. I thought maybe you recognized me from earlier today when we were leaving." She looked at me in a way I couldn't understand. "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you mean. I was inside getting ready for the ship's departure when we left. You must be confusing me with someone else." I released her hand. "I'm sorry, I must have been mistaken. I hope we meet again." "This ship isn't very big, Mr. Maitland. Goodbye." I finished my meal without really paying attention to it. I heard people talking around me and answered them, but I couldn't remember what was said. Eventually, an older couple left. The redhead decided to stop after sharing some looks with Andy, and then Cindy smiled at me, saying she and Andy were going to go up on deck. The rain had stopped, and the night looked lovely. I sat alone at the table and sipped coffee for another half hour. What kept going through my mind was how foolish I felt. A lovely woman who was married wouldn't be interested in a middle-aged man like me. It just wasn't going to happen, and if it could, she was still married. Maybe her ring was meant to signal others to stay away. But I felt misled. I had spent enough time reading people to know she had been distant and not completely open. I wondered if Edwards had organized a way for her to keep an eye on me without anyone else knowing. I wouldn't be surprised, but I had no way to find out. Then again, why should it matter? Let her watch if she wanted. It would probably be as exciting as watching paint dry. Eventually, I made my way up to Deck 7. It was around 9 p.m., but many people were still out. I walked to the front of the ship, where a few people leaned against the railing, enjoying the gentle sway of the ship as it moved through the waves. I looked into the darkness. We had left behind the lights of Florida, and only the ship's glow lit up the sea under the stars. I realized I could stand there for the entire cruise, and it would still be worth it. My mind wandered as I took it all in. There's nothing else like it in the world. I felt her next to me, hands resting on the railing, taking in the same stunning view. "Are you following me, Miss Desjardins?" I glanced at her. Her expression was hard to read, and I wondered what it would look like if she smiled. "I told you this ship isn't that big. We'll see each other from time to time. I can tell you're a bit like me. If I were free, I'd come here every night. My life is all about words, but I couldn't find the right ones to express how I felt in this moment. I was told to take this cruise, and now I'm really thankful. Perhaps nothing is more beautiful than the sea when it's wild. A storm can be both amazing and frightening. That was you at the lounge last night, across from this deck." She turned from the view and met my eyes, a small smile on her lips. "Yes, I was with some guests and staff, but the smoke got too much. I stepped outside to get some fresh air and enjoy the rain and the waves. I noticed you before you saw me. You were quite interesting." I shook my head, unsure about her kind words. "You are a dreamer. I'm just an ordinary guy." Her smile grew a bit. "You don't see yourself clearly, Mr. Maitland. I'm not sure why. I'm not a poet, but in the rain and dark, you seemed part of the night. I apologize if my words don't capture it well. Your English is very good. Still, I think you're exaggerating. Why say such things?" She didn't argue, her calmness unchanged. "You saw me as we were getting ready to leave. Did someone ask you to look out for me?" "No." "Then why?" This time, her smile shone brightly, making her even more lovely. "A woman should have some mystery, Mr. Maitland. It makes us more interesting. What would you want from a passenger?" "Not just a passenger, Mr. Maitland. You are an intriguing man." She looked back at the dark sea and added, "I hope we meet again. But I must return to my duties. Good night." She left me with more questions than before. For the first time in months, I felt a strong need to find some comfort. I almost thought about going back to my room and that big bed, but my earlier attempts to feel better hadn't worked well. I felt hesitant about trying again, afraid of failing. It had been some time since I struggled with those thoughts until Debbie and Doug. Besides, I was letting my imagination roam. She was a beautiful woman, but calling her part of the night felt like something from a storybook. Even when I was younger and had some attention from a few women, I never felt like I was in her league. She wouldn't suddenly be interested in me just because I helped her. Plus, she said she wasn't assigned to look out for me. But perhaps she wasn't telling the whole truth. She mentioned her job involved caring for special needs. Did that include someone who looked like they needed support? That seemed more likely than thinking a married woman like her might feel drawn to me in a sudden way. Regardless of her reasons, she had definitely lifted my spirits. Being out on that night added to that feeling. I walked around the deck for about an hour before going inside. I grabbed a drink, choosing my usual Bloody Mary with extra spice from a cozy jazz bar that reminded me of Paris in the 1920s, and then made my way back to the casino. As I wandered, I heard someone call, "Hi, Mr. Maitland." I looked over to one of the craps tables and saw Dan Jenkins and his wife. He waved me over, so I walked up to them. "Mr. M," Jenkins said, "I'm feeling a bit unlucky and have lost some money. The dealer suggested I get someone to roll the dice for me. Would you be willing to try? Just looking for a friendly face." I shook my head. "Sorry, I'm not really lucky either. Gambling has never worked out well for me." "Just give it a shot," said a gentle voice from behind me. A woman stood next to me, looking taller than I expected. She reached out her hand, and Jenkins smiled as he placed the dice in her palms. She handed them to me and held my hands softly, her breath light as she leaned closer. Sometimes a fresh look can change your luck, or so I've heard. I took the dice in my right hand, stepped to the table, and rolled them. A moment later, Caroline gasped, and Jenkins shouted in excitement. He congratulated me with a friendly pat on the back. "That almost got me back on track. Roll for me again." I glanced at her, but she shook her head and let go of my hands. "I'm sorry. I need to go. It was nice seeing you again, Mr. Maitland." I looked at Jenkins and shrugged. "Sorry, my good luck just left." He gave her a quick look and said, "I think you might find some luck yet, Mr. Maitland." His wife nudged him playfully, and he laughed softly. I smiled back and replied, "No, I think I've used up all my luck for now. If I were you, I wouldn't push mine too much." His wife took his arm and said, "He won't. Besides, we still have things to do, right, dear?" I was back in my room in about 30 minutes, and I barely had time to settle in before I fell asleep almost instantly. The sea air seemed to help me sleep deeply. When I woke up the next morning, I couldn't recall any of my dreams, but they felt nice. Sunday, July 17th, 2005. We were in Nassau in the morning, and I thought about staying on the ship, but I stepped off onto the concrete pier that led a short way to the remains of the famous straw market near Bay Street and George Street. It had been damaged by a fire a few years ago now. It was in a large tent, but it still had plenty of items that were mostly popular with tourists. I bought some t-shirts for my kids, thinking they would like them, and was on my way back when a cab pulled up beside me. Inside were Aline and another female staffer. "Mr. Maitland, Suzanne and I were going for a quick lunch before heading back to the ship. Would you like to join us?" I gestured toward the car. Bahamian cabs are not very big. "I don't think I can fit." "Squeeze in," she said, and I did, feeling her warmth next to me. I could hear her breathing. Suzanne laughed a lot. Lunch was nice, but I ate only a little because I knew life would continue when I returned home. "Is that all you're eating?" Suzanne asked. "He has to watch his weight," Aline said with a little smile, sitting across from me. "No," I replied, unable to help myself. "That's not the weight I need to worry about." Suzanne laughed, and Aline smiled softly. Back on the ship, which was mostly empty, I read part of a book, swam in one of the warm pools, and took a nap. As I walked around the decks, I met a group of 4 teachers from Atlanta who were around 30 years old. They were enjoying their time off and celebrating new starts after important changes in their lives. They looked good and were friendly, clearly feeling good about themselves. One of them made her interest clear by brushing against me. When I turned to talk to her, she smiled playfully. The others giggled as she looked at me curiously. "Bill," she said, having asked for our first names. "I just went through a tough breakup and my self-esteem is a bit low. Now I'm here talking to you, and please say you're interested. That wedding ring can be confusing. Where is your wife, by the way?" "She's probably at home in the house I worked hard to pay for. I assume she's spending time with someone else now. And I'm interested, Lee. It's just that my soon-to-be ex-wife is blonde, and right now, I'm not really attracted to that. No offense." She put her hand on mine. "No offense taken, Bill. My friends and I wondered about you. We've seen you around, and you seem to keep to yourself most of the time, except for a few moments with that French lady. People usually don't approach you. It feels like there's a barrier around you. I had to encourage them to come and see if you wanted to talk. But I get what you might be feeling. I finalized my divorce 2 months ago. It was a tough time for me." I looked at her. She had a nice presence, and her features were attractive without being too strong. She was about 5'5", and it felt good to look down at her. It must be the sea air, or maybe the choices here are few. I have to ask, what made you want to come up to me?" She looked at me with some confusion. "I don't understand." I'm not exactly tall or the usual kind of handsome. Why would a woman like you want to talk to me? She looked at her friends, then said, Can I ask how long you've been married? Almost 18 years, and we dated for 2 years before that. Please don't be offended, but did you know I guess you've never been unfaithful, right? No. That's interesting. Married men often give off a certain vibe. Unless you're the kind of woman who likes a challenge, most women won't spend their time on someone like that. Life is too short for that. You might have been married so long that you give off a stay-away feeling. You might think you don't attract women, but that's how many see you as a married man. That's Bill, but thank you, Lee. Are you sure you wouldn't consider having lunch or maybe some drinks? She smiled at the idea. I know I'm being forward, but this is a Celebrate Freedom cruise. It could be a nice change for you. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. But you're too much like her. Not completely. I'd think of her every moment we spent together. I know this is a hard way to respond, but I've been a bit overwhelmed these last 3 months. I'm just starting to feel settled again, and a lot of that means not thinking about her. I'm sorry. She reached over and gave me a gentle touch on the cheek. It's okay. Give it time. Are you sure you don't want my number in Atlanta just in case? Have you heard the saying about not getting involved with someone who has more problems than you? Well, I have even more problems. Take care. I walked away from her, wondering why I hadn't accepted her offer. She seemed nice, even if a little lonely. She wasn't as impressive as Debbie, but how many women like her would I meet? I looked up and saw Aline Desjardins leaning over the railing, looking at me and the group of hopeful divorcees. She was the one woman I'd met who felt as impressive as Debbie, but still seemed far away. The rest of the day went by without too many issues. I found my seat for dinner again, and the older couple and Cindy Matthews were there. I noticed both her husband and the redhead were missing. Not thinking much of it, I casually asked, Is your husband gone? Did he go ashore? I understand we'll be leaving for Marsh Harbor soon. She was sipping her drink, and I noticed her eyes looked a bit watery. I wasn't feeling well this morning, so I stayed behind. Andy wanted to go. I haven't heard from him since. She looked at the empty chair where the redhead had been, and that one look said a lot about where Andy might be and how things were going in her marriage. I wished I could say something to cheer her up, but it seemed like she was thinking about a Celebrate divorce cruise in a few years. I just hoped she wouldn't let this situation get to her too much before she made her own choices. After a while, we finished the meal. The older couple left, and we stayed at the table. I sipped on my coffee while she enjoyed her drink. I didn't want her to be alone. Well, since your husband isn't back yet, would you mind keeping me company for a bit, Mrs. Matthews? That's fine, but please, I'd like to say I spent some time on this cruise with a truly lovely woman. She turned to me, and I noticed tears beginning to form in her eyes. You don't need me for that. That nice lady has had her eye on you, and I've seen you two together. You do know she's married, right? And you're wearing a wedding ring. I answered her unasked question. I'm almost done with my divorce, and I don't know what Miss Desjardins' situation is. Nothing is happening, Cindy. She's just being friendly. Uh-huh, okay, but you don't want a married lady getting in the way of your chances. There aren't any chances of anything. I just want to have a drink or two, walk outside, maybe dance a bit if you're up for it. Then I'll leave, and Andy should be back looking for you. We went outside together. I gently helped her a few times when she swayed, but she was managing well despite the drinks. We walked on the 7th floor deck, watching the ocean and talking about our lives. She was set to inherit a fortune like her parents. Andy knew this too, just the classic story of a rich girl. We reached a little jazz bar and I ordered a Bloody Mary. She ordered another scotch, but I kindly suggested she switch to coffee. After a moment, she agreed and ordered coffee instead. We sat there for a few minutes until she asked me if I danced. We moved gently together rather than really dancing. That's what the 3 other couples on the small dance floor were doing. She felt warm in my arms, resting her head against my chest. I couldn't help but wonder why Andy would risk losing such a connection. But then again, I had always been happy as a married man. Finally, we walked to her cabin on the 7th deck, one of the nice rooms with balconies facing the sea. She found her key and opened the door. We both looked inside. The room was empty. We stood in the doorway while she gazed into the space, and I wished I knew her well enough to offer comfort. I know he married me for my money, or rather, my parents' money. I'm not foolish, although people think I'm just a typical blonde. I think he has feelings for me, or he could. But I love him. I just have to hope one day he'll realize he loves me back. Is that foolish? I gave her a hug and gently kissed her on the forehead. Now I felt really old. Not foolish at all, Cindy. Not foolish. Good night. It wasn't fair. I had just started to feel better, and now I felt down again. I didn't need to be a fortune teller to know there would be no happy ending for this girl from a wealthy family. Some people never change. I went up to the gym and found Andre, the attendant, who was getting ready to finish up for the night. He looked quite unhappy. Eventually, he told me there was a party starting in a few minutes in a part of the ship that passengers couldn't access. There was someone he had liked for a while who was waiting for him. Andre was only 25. I felt sorry for him. I'm a prosecutor and a government worker, Andre. Just get everything ready so I can finish up and lock the place. I promise you won't get in trouble. Go see your date. After he left, I changed into a comfy t-shirt and shorts. I'd need to wash them in the morning. I grabbed some old tennis shoes and socks from a gym bag I had taken on the cruise. I hopped on the treadmill and walked for 10 minutes, then ran for 20, followed by another 10 minutes of walking and another 20 minutes of running. When I stopped, I leaned against the treadmill, trying to catch my breath. My stomach and back ached and my legs felt weak. I turned the air up to 80 degrees to mimic the conditions from Hurley's gym at night. Sweat dripped down, and my shirt stuck to my skin. For a moment, sweat got in my eyes, and I tried to wipe it away with my shirt, but it only made it worse. "Here," a gentle voice said, and someone handed me a towel. I wiped my face and tried to breathe normally. She took a step back and crossed her arms, looking calm. I finally caught my breath enough to ask, "And what brings you here at midnight, Miss Desjardins?" Without a smile, she replied, "I told you this is a small ship. People meet each other all the time." "At midnight in a gym that's closed?" She shrugged, seeming relaxed. "You run like something's chasing you. What are you running from, Mr. Maitland?" "You know, Edwards hired you to keep an eye on me. Good job, Miss Desjardins. I almost thought for a moment, but never mind. You're really good at your job. The captain let me choose. Any of the 3 assistant directors could have taken the job, but I read about you in the local paper. You seemed like an interesting person." I rubbed my face until it felt dry and let out a sigh. Why did I feel so uneasy? I gave a small laugh. Is there anything funnier than a middle-aged man imagining things about a beautiful woman? "What's so funny?" she asked. "Nothing. Just a personal thought." "Well, Miss Desjardins, you can go now. You have lifted my spirits with your nice conversation. This cruise has really improved how I feel. I just need to finish my workout and then I'm off to bed. The fresh sea air helps me sleep well. I promise not to do anything silly. Please, don't let me get in the way of your evening plans. Continue enjoying your night." She put a finger to her lips and said, "My plans include going to the Alpha Lounge nearby. There's a music duo playing until at least 2 a.m. or so. There will be drinks and light snacks. It's a lovely night outside. I'm free until late tomorrow morning. If you'd like to join me as my guest, we could have a nice evening together." I knew life could be tough, but each time I faced its unfairness, it struck me hard again. Why show something so nice only to take it away before I could reach it? If I went, I'd only be chasing an empty dream. And even if she meant it, what would it change? I was just part of a job. You set a standard I didn't think people could reach. I would already give you high marks for keeping me happy. You don't have to go this far unless you get rewarded for impressing guests. That was the first time I saw real anger on someone's face. Her expression tightened, and she glared at me. "Tonight shows that you can never really know someone, Mr. Maitland. I began to think thoughts a married woman shouldn't have about anyone but her husband. Then I realized just now that you are a very sad man. I don't know who has hurt you, but I see that you are struggling. You cannot accept kindness from others. I have seen you walk these decks like a ghost. There is something about you that pushes people away. I saw you with those women earlier today. Any normal man, any man of feeling would have been tempted, but you weren't. I thought the man you saw in the lounge was a friend, but he said you were a stranger. Maybe that's why you were polite to him. Do you have any friends, Mr. Maitland? Her face changed, and I thought it showed sadness. But that look quickly shifted back to anger. I was going to offer friendship to a man I found interesting and appealing, but you took that offer and pushed it away. You think I'm not sincere because I'm here for a job, right? Because I was hired to make sure you are safe, you think I'm not real. She shook her head, tossing her hair. Well, you can keep your distance for the rest of the cruise, and I will ask the captain to assign someone else to look after you. And if he couldn't find anyone, that was fine. I'm going to the Alpha Lounge to have some drinks and enjoy good company, he said, and watch the sea. You can leave me alone, like you Americans say. She turned and walked away without saying anything more. I felt a mix of frustration and resentment towards Debbie. I had loved being married. I lived with someone I cared about and who cared about me. I might find other women interesting, but there was no one except for one long-time friend I really wanted to pursue. When women showed interest, I didn't have to think about how to respond. I would step back from any temptation and go home to my wonderful wife. It was okay to think about someone else, as long as it was just in my thoughts. Now I was single, kind of. It was harder than before. Should I keep working out, forget about the enchanting Miss Desjardins, go back to my room to rest, and avoid her for the rest of the cruise, returning to my quiet life? She didn't really have feelings for me. It was just a professional relationship, and she was understandably upset with me. If I showed up at the Alpha Lounge, she would probably ignore me. But her behavior over the past few days and what she said tonight made me wonder if our relationship was more complicated than it seemed. If there was a chance to understand her better, I felt I had to go to the Alpha Lounge. Still, she had mentioned being married. Nothing would happen with a beautiful married woman. A guy like me didn't usually attract women like Aline. Yet if by some miracle I found myself close to Aline and things didn't go well, I would be really disappointed. In any case, I decided I was going to the Alpha Lounge.
What's up, story lovers? This is the Story Guy, and if you're hungry for crazy tales and mind-blowing narratives, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our weekly dose of crazy cheating stories, fun fiction and gut-ripping comedy from around the world. But that's not all. We also create our own original stories, and trust me, you won't find these anywhere else. Want even more spine-tingling reads? Head down to the description and grab our exclusive story collections. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.